If you can translate this perfectly, I'll promote you, the perpetual desk jockey, to manager. Well, not that you could ever pull it off. That's what my manager, Daniel, said as he handed me a sheet filled with lengthy English text after my 6-year return from an overseas post to the main office. The text contained technical jargon and complex grammatical structures. I, once labeled a useless employee and relegated to the sidelines, stood there quietly. Before my overseas assignment, I was a laughingstock, making endless typos and basic mistakes in reports, drawing ridicule from my coworkers. Daniel glanced at me with a smug smile, exuding a sense of superiority. His eyes seemed to say he still saw the same incompetent employee from years ago. What's wrong? If you really worked hard overseas, something like this should be a breeze, right? But you probably can't do it. Even if you know a bit of English, your brain's still empty, isn't it? Are you following me, or should I slow down? Daniel's tone was dripping with provocation. The office fell silent. I could feel all eyes in the room fixed on me. There he goes again. No way he can do it. This is going to be embarrassing to watch. Snickers and mocking gazes stabbed at me from all directions. I took a deep breath and began translating the text, carefully, word by word. It's done. When I said that, Daniel's smile vanished, and his face changed to one of surprise. What? Are you kidding me? There's no way you could solve something this difficult. With trembling hands, Daniel held up the paper filled with text and showed it to the surrounding colleagues. Look at this, everyone. This is the latest amendment to international mining law. Even our corporate legal advisor struggles with this level of complexity. Who the hell are you? The office buzzed with murmurs. Colleagues exchanged astonished glances between me and Daniel. Sweat formed on Daniel's forehead. At that moment, the president's highly trusted and stunning secretary approached us with graceful strides. Daniel, is this some kind of joke? He's actually much higher up the ladder than you are. Yes, my true identity is. On the 30th floor of the high-rise, I stepped into the main lobby, where sunlight danced on the gleaming marble floors. A nostalgic scent hit me as I walked through. By the showcase displaying mineral samples, the faint aroma of copier toner mingled with the subtle scent of coffee. The unmistakable smell of an office. I, Michael Crane, had returned to the headquarters of Crane Mineral Development Corporation after 6 years. Crane Mineral Development is a comprehensive mining company specializing in the exploration, development, mining, refining, and research of related technologies for mineral resources. With over 50 years of history since its founding, it operates a wide range of businesses both domestically and internationally. Stepping out of the elevator, I was greeted by that familiar scent. I paused in front of the showcase lined with mineral samples, unable to help but smile. It was a moment that reminded me of the allure of this work. Unearthing resources hidden deep underground and transforming them into something useful for people's lives. The process is fraught with challenges, but that's what makes it rewarding. Balancing environmental considerations with technological innovation, and coexisting with local communities. These are the challenges we continuously strive to overcome, and striving to overcome them is our mission. What I learned from 6 years abroad can be put to use here. That thought made my heart race with anticipation. I felt a renewed sense of gratitude for being involved in such a meaningful job, one that supports people's lives across the globe. Beyond the neatly arranged desks, I could see a large glass-walled conference room. It seemed the morning meeting had already started. Hey, Michael. Long time no see. The voice belonged to Daniel, the manager. As always, his sharp eyebrows and intense gaze left a lasting impression. Memories of being rigorously trained under him until just before I left for my overseas post 6 years ago came rushing back. It's been a while, Daniel. I bow politely. I could feel his eyes closely examining me. Changed your hairstyle, huh? Well, 6 years fooling around overseas will do that to you. I feel a bit puzzled by Daniel's words. However, I remained calm. I wasn't fooling around. I worked hard. Is that so? Then let's see what you've got. Daniel pulled out a thick file from his desk. This is the proposal for a new mining development project. Take a look and summarize it in 30 minutes. I nodded and returned to my seat, opening the file. From the first page, I was greeted by a list of difficult words. I pressed on, trying my best to read through, but eventually stumbled upon a word I couldn't figure out. Excuse me, Daniel. Could you tell me how to read this? Swallowing my embarrassment, I asked for help. Daniel frowned, leaning over to see where I was pointing. It's mining. You can't even read this? Seriously? If you can't handle basic word like this, how do you expect to work here? I bet you were just goofing off overseas. I felt like the other employees were looking at me because of those words. My face grew warm. I wanted to argue back but held my tongue. The spelling of a word had always been my weak point, and before my overseas assignment, I was labeled a useless employee, relegated to the sidelines. Endless typos and basic mistakes in reports made me the subject of ridicule among my colleagues. Seeing my reaction, Daniel smirked mischievously. What's that look? Trying to say you weren't slacking off? Fine. Let's test your English skills. Translate this into Japanese. You have 10 minutes. Daniel walked to the whiteboard. He picked up a marker and started writing English sentences all over the board. I focused my gaze on the board. It was filled with long English sentences containing technical terms about mining and complex grammatical structures. As I stared at the text, bewildered, Daniel sneered. What's wrong? If you really worked seriously overseas, this should be a piece of cake, right? Tell you what, if you translate this perfectly, I'll promote you to manager. Not that you could ever manage it. Daniel's tone was dripping with mockery. The office fell silent again. I felt all eyes in the room focus on me. There he goes again. No way he can do it. Let's see him make a fool of himself. Snickers echoed around me, and mocking gazes bore into my back. I took a deep breath and turned back to the board. Focusing intently, I began translating the text word by word. Carefully, I replaced the technical terms with precise Japanese equivalents, breaking down the complex sentence structures into clear, comprehensible explanations. When I finished writing the final sentence, I glanced at the clock. 5 minutes had passed since Daniel gave me the challenge. Relieved that I had finished within the time limit, I turned to face him. Daniel, it's done. As I spoke, Daniel's smirk disappeared, replaced by a look of shock. What? You've got to be kidding. There's no way you could solve something this difficult. His words caused murmurs to ripple through the office. Unbelievable. He finished that in 5 minutes? Half the time he was given? Realizing the shift in the employee's tone toward praise for me, Daniel's face grew visibly paler. With trembling hands, he held up the paper with the English text and addressed the office. Everyone, take a look. This is the latest amendment to international mining law. It's a legal document filled with technical jargon, deliberately written in complex sentence structures. And it includes content that requires expertise in mineral resources to even begin to understand. Even our corporate legal advisors struggle with this kind of material. The office buzzed with astonishment. Colleagues exchanged incredulous looks between me and Daniel. Sweat began to bead on Daniel's forehead. At that moment, a clear, composed voice rang out. Excuse me, Daniel. You're underestimating Michael's abilities. Both Daniel and I turned toward the voice, and standing there was Sophia, the secretary. With her upright posture, poised demeanor, and intelligent gleam in her eyes. She seemed almost like a work of art, her presence enhancing the entire office around her. With light, graceful steps, she approached us. Her movements were elegant yet efficient. The colleagues' gazes naturally shifted toward her. Michael has spent more time living abroad than he has here. His abilities aren't just memorized knowledge, so they're adaptable to any situation. Daniel's face twisted with irritation at her words. Being able to speak English doesn't automatically mean he's capable at his job. No way someone like him is ready to be a manager. It's 10 years too soon. Sophia tilted her head curiously. Manager? What are you talking about? Michael is already. Sophia. I hurriedly grabbed Sophia's upper arm gently. She blinked, surprised, her eyes widening just a fraction. You had some documents to check, didn't you? Daniel, excuse us for a moment. I quickly led Sophia away from Daniel. From behind us, I heard Daniel shout, "Hey, wait," but neither of us looked back as we exited the office. The moment we stepped into the hallway, I let out a deep sigh. Sophia, I appreciate your help, but could you tone it down a bit? You almost let slip that I'm supposed to become the president someday. I whispered, glancing around to make sure no one was nearby. Sophia looked slightly puzzled. But it's true, isn't it? You're the son of Mr. Irwin, after all. I'm trying to keep that under wraps. As I spoke, vivid memories from my university days surfaced in my mind. It was around the time job hunting season had begun. I was sitting in the university's career office with a group of classmates, discussing how to write application forms and prepare for interviews. Out of the blue, one of them turned to me. Hey, Michael, do you have any connection to Crane Mineral Development? Your last name's the same as Mr. Irwin's. Caught off guard, I froze, unable to deny it. My silence gave them their answer. No way. Are you Mr. Irwin's son? Unable to completely deny it, I nodded hesitantly. Everything changed from that moment on. Must be nice for you, Michael. You can just get in with connections. Are you even applying to other companies? Feels like a waste of time, doesn't it? Interviews don't really matter to you, do they? Half teasing, half jealous remarks flew in my direction. Even if the words were laced with humor on the surface, the real feelings beneath them were glaringly clear. The fact that I was diligently studying and applying to countless companies no longer registered with anyone. The label of the president's son had come to define my entire existence. At drinking parties with my job hunting peers, someone would inevitably say, Michael should pay. After all, you're already guaranteed a job offer. Right? Maybe they meant it as a joke, but the underlying sarcasm pierced me deeply. Even when I explained that I was the second son and wouldn't inherit the company, no one cared to listen. In just one day, I had gone from being Michael, the hard-working job hunter, to Michael, the president's son with connections. My individuality and abilities were ignored. I was seen only through the lens of a title. Eventually, for certain reasons, I ended up joining my father's company. But I hated the experiences I'd had during job hunting so much that I resolved to keep my status as the president's son a secret. Even my father was aware of my decision. That's why the only person in the company who knows I'm Mr. Irwin's son is Sophia. My father is trusting her completely, so told her, thinking it would be good to have at least one person who know. Sophia, however, seemed displeased with my decision to hide it. When I told her I wanted to avoid my identity being revealed, she furrowed her brows slightly. You don't need to hide it. Your abilities are real. If you revealed who you are, people would respect you more. When I hesitated, she continued. And honestly, I don't like Daniel's attitude. Failing to fairly evaluate your skills is a loss for the company. There's no need to give you special treatment just because you're the president's son, but treating you unfairly is wrong too. Her words left me with a conflicted expression. Maybe he's harsh, but I think it's for the company's sake. I'm sure Daniel has his reasons. When I spoke quietly, Sophia looked at me with a surprised expression. Michael, you don't have to defend him. No, I really believe that. And besides, I still have my shortcomings. It's true that I used to have trouble reading difficult vocabulary. So, I've decided that I'll study from now on. I'll make the most of my overseas experience while adapting to the work here in Japan. If I do that, I'm sure Daniel will eventually acknowledge me. Looking out the window, I spoke with determination. Sophia's astonished expression softened, and she smiled faintly. All right. I'll respect your decision. But don't push yourself too hard, okay? Thanks, Sophia. I bowed to Sophia with gratitude. With a renewed sense of purpose, I returned to the office. From that day forward, I spent every evening at my desk, poring over difficult vocabulary frequently used in business documents. I used phone apps to study during my commute and made a habit of immediately looking up unfamiliar words. One day, I was assigned to a project team and found myself in an important negotiation with overseas clients. It was an opportunity to fully utilize the skills I'd been honing. In the meeting room sat executives from a major American mining company. Spread out in front of them was a complex contract written in both Japanese and English. The negotiations were stalling, and the atmosphere was growing tense. The American side's attorney, frowning, spoke up. The interpretation of this clause is problematic, particularly regarding the mining rights of the concession area and the obligation to reduce environmental impact. These concepts don't align with our understanding. Could you clarify their specific meanings under Japanese law and how they define our responsibilities? The sections in question were filled with technical terms written in difficult vocabulary. Their nuanced meanings, rooted in Japanese legal frameworks, were hard to convey through a simple English translation. Tension spread through the meeting room. The colleague next to me, visibly flustered, fumbled with an electronic dictionary. His fingers trembled as he struggled to find the right translations, and the frustration showed on his face. Daniel attempted to explain, but his grasp of the specialized legal terminology fell short, leaving him at a loss for words. I scanned the Japanese portion of the contract. Mining rights of the concession area and obligation to reduce environmental impact. Words that had once been indecipherable to me were now instantly comprehensible. And I knew I could translate them into clear, precise English. Taking a deep breath, I stood up. I'd like to address that point in detail. The executives' gazes all turned toward me at once. Calming my pounding heart, I began to speak fluent English. The term mining concession in this context doesn't simply refer to a mining location. In Japan, underground resource rights are granted by the government and are separate from surface property ownership. A mining concession includes not only current mining areas but also potential future zones. Furthermore, it encompasses obligations such as environmental preservation and coexistence with local communities. In short, the concept integrates both rights and responsibilities. I translated the technical terms with precision and elaborated on the nuances of Japanese laws and customs. As for the obligation to reduce environmental impact, this is a key concept for Japanese companies. However, by utilizing your company's advanced environmental technologies, I believe we can achieve a mutually beneficial win-win outcome. Using my overseas experience, I proactively addressed the concerns from the American side. I carefully navigated the complex Japanese terms in the contract, translating them into accurate English while preserving the subtle nuances unique to the Japanese language. After 2 hours of explanations and negotiations, we began to find common ground. The American representative nodded in satisfaction. Michael, your explanations were exceptionally clear and insightful. Thank you for your deep knowledge of both Japanese and American business practices. Thank you. Based on this consensus, we'll prepare a revised draft of the contract, ensuring a balance between mutual benefits and obligations while adhering to legal standards. With those words, the tension that had gripped the room dissipated. Both sides began to relax, relief evident on their faces. The American representative stood up and extended his hand toward me. As we shook hands, a round of small applause broke out in the meeting room. The faces of my colleagues reflected their relief and joy. After the meeting ended and the American delegation left, my colleagues gathered around me. "Good job, you did well," they said. Among them, Daniel approached me. Feeling nervous yet slightly hopeful, I looked at Daniel's face. He crossed his arms and stared at me. His eyes seemed to reflect a mix of complex emotions. "Michael, you did well this time. But don't get carried away. Just because things went smoothly once doesn't mean it was your skill. You succeeded because you're slightly better at English. That's all. Don't let it go to your head." His voice was low, barely audible to anyone else. The joy that had been building inside me deflated slightly at his words. All I could do was nod quietly. He was right. If I let myself feel content with this, I wouldn't truly grow. I understand. I'll keep working to improve. Good. Make sure you do. Daniel replied, turning on his heel and walking away. Despite my mixed feelings, I resolved to continue working hard. A few days later, the office atmosphere felt different. I noticed Daniel seemed unusually upbeat. Typically, he observed his subordinates with a critical eye, but today, there was a noticeable spark of excitement in his demeanor. During the morning meeting, he spoke with uncharacteristic enthusiasm. "Everyone, listen up. We've got a major deal on the table. This could be a groundbreaking project for our company. If we succeed, it might change the future of our business." His voice carried a level of exhilaration rarely seen from him. The office fell silent as every pair of eyes turned to him. "That's incredible, Daniel. You've done it again. How did you land such a huge project?" Expressions of awe and admiration erupted around the room, and even a few people clapped. The badge on Daniel's chest, symbolizing his status as one of the company's top performers, seemed to shine brighter than ever. Indeed, his sales skills and negotiation expertise were renowned throughout the industry. It wasn't uncommon for him to resurrect deals thought to be lost. This time was no exception. His brilliance was on full display. I couldn't help but let out a quiet murmur of admiration myself. Securing such a high-profile project against all odds was a testament to Daniel's extraordinary abilities. It was a moment that reaffirmed his status as a master of his craft. There was an unusual excitement in Daniel's voice. Everyone in the department, myself included, leaned in eagerly. Daniel continued, sounding almost exhilarated. "We're partnering with a major overseas mining company to launch a new mining development project. We plan to use the latest environmentally friendly technology, and if it succeeds, it could revolutionize the industry. This project will require advanced English skills and specialized knowledge. Negotiations won't be easy. But if we can overcome those challenges, our capabilities will finally be recognized." My heart began to race. A growing desire to say, "I want to do this," filled me. My overseas experience, my English proficiency, and my recently acquired expertise in technical terms and difficult vocabulary. All of it could be put to use here. However, when Daniel announced the team members for the project, my name wasn't on the list. The excitement in my chest abruptly subsided, replaced by a heavy, leaden feeling. Without thinking, I raised my hand. "Daniel, please let me join the project. I have overseas experience, and I believe I contributed during the recent negotiations. I'm confident I can make a difference on this team as well." I desperately tried to emphasize my value. My voice carried determination and passion, though it may have trembled slightly. Daniel listened to my words, then fixed me with a cold gaze before speaking. "This is a project for the team I trust." "Sorry, but I don't trust you yet." "What?" Daniel sneered slightly as he continued. "Just because you can speak a bit of English doesn't mean you're ready to be a full-fledged member. While you were spending 6 years abroad, Do you know how much experience we've been building here in Japan? I can't entrust a high-stakes project like this to someone as unreliable as you. First, prove you can handle the tasks you're given. His words cut into my chest like a cold blade. I could only clench my teeth and stay silent. That's all. Those selected for the project stay behind. Everyone else is dismissed. With heavy steps, I rose from my seat. Just before stepping out the door, I glanced back one last time. I saw Daniel and the chosen team members huddled together, engrossed in discussion. A deep sense of frustration and loneliness spread through me as I realized I wasn't part of that circle. After work, I walked through the city streets, letting out a long sigh. Ah! My shoulders slumped, and my steps were heavy. The memory of Daniel's cold words from that morning still echoed in my ears. Michael! I turned to see Sophia hurrying to catch up with me. Heading straight home? Want to grab a drink? Her warm smile brought a small sense of comfort. Sure, I could use some company. Let's go. We entered a nearby bar and toasted with beers. As the cool drink soothed my throat, I felt my mind begin to settle. I heard about it from some of the others. Don't let it get to you. Everyone knows how capable you are, Sophia said, her tone encouraging. I gave a wry smile and stared at my glass. But Daniel isn't wrong. I still struggle with difficult vocabularies, and my experience in a Japanese company is limited. That's why I want to grow. Without opportunities, how can I ever earn his trust? I sighed again, watching the bubbles in my glass slowly fade. The thought of how to gain Daniel's approval weighed heavily on me. Sophia listened to my words and showed a thoughtful expression for a moment. Then, she looked back at me with a gentle smile. I think your attitude is incredible. Recognizing your weaknesses and striving to overcome them, that's real strength. Her words surprised me, and I looked up at her. She continued with conviction in her eyes. Plus, your overseas experience is a strength no one else has. Even if you don't get a chance now, your time will come. Just keep building your skills step by step. One day, even Daniel will recognize your growth. Don't give up. A small light of hope ignited in my chest at her words. Thank you, Sophia. I feel a bit better now. I'll keep pushing forward. I expressed my gratitude from the bottom of my heart. Suddenly, Sophia's expression changed. That's just the polite version. Honestly, I can't take it anymore. Her voice rose sharply. Listen, Michael. Tonight, we're drinking, seriously drinking. She raised her glass with gusto and downed it in one go. Okay. As I hesitated, she was already pouring her next drink. What's with Daniel? Just a bit of English? Are you kidding me? Her cheeks were beginning to flush. Not recognizing Michael's abilities? He must be blind. She emptied her glass again and slammed it down on the table with force. We've got amazing skills too. Come on, Michael, drink. Tonight, we're going to vent everything out. Her eyes sparkled with an uncharacteristic fervor. The calm and composed secretary was nowhere to be seen. I suddenly remembered Sophia was a lightweight when it came to alcohol. That's it. Let's go to karaoke. We'll sing our hearts out and let it all go. I was taken aback, but I couldn't help but smile along with her. It was the first time I had ever seen Sophia like this. All right, I'll go with you, Sophia. We toasted lightly, and Sophia beamed with a bright smile. Great. Tonight, we're going all out until morning if we have to. That night, we let loose completely, shouting, laughing, and relieving all the pent-up stress we had. Thanks to Sophia, I felt like I could move forward again without sweating the small stuff. A few weeks later, the day of the major project's contract signing arrived. The meeting room was thick with tension. I stood in the corner with the other non-selected members, watching the proceedings. Dressed in a brand new suit and exuding confidence, Daniel faced the representatives across the table. The negotiations seemed to be going smoothly. With this, we finalized the agreement, Daniel announced, shaking hands firmly with the opposing representative. Applause broke out among the employees in the room. As expected of Daniel. Flawless negotiations. Securing such a huge deal, amazing. Praises filled the air as Daniel basked in the admiration. I joined in the applause, but a mix of feelings stirred within me. There was no denying Daniel's skill. But the frustration of not being part of the project resurfaced. Daniel turned to the chosen team members, thanking them with a satisfied look. As I stood outside their celebratory circle, a pang of loneliness hit me. Still, I resolved to learn something valuable from this success for my own growth. However, the mood of celebration turned on its head in an instant. Right after the contract was signed, the opposing representative smirked. So, this means all your company's mining rights and environmental obligations are now transferred to us. What did you just say? Daniel's face froze. Their lawyer stepped forward, pointing to a clause in the contract. Take a look at this section. Your company has relinquished all rights to us, while taking full responsibility for any environmental issues. Tension gripped the room. Daniel hurriedly scanned the contract, his complexion growing paler with each passing second. Wait a moment. Daniel's trembling voice echoed through the room. This must be a mistake. We only conducted a standard transaction. The opposing representative cut him off with a cold smile. There's no mistake. We've done nothing wrong. We simply executed the deal as outlined in the contract. At that moment, Matthew from the legal department stepped forward. My apologies. Allow me to explain the situation. Matthew took a deep breath before continuing. This is our fault. We overlooked a trap hidden in the fine print of the contract. The room fell deadly silent as Matthew elaborated. In Clause 7, under the pretense of mutual benefit promotion, the transfer of mining rights was concealed. Furthermore, Clause 12, concerning environmental protection obligations, assigns all environmental liabilities to our company. In essence, we've lost a key mining asset and now face enormous environmental compliance costs. How did this happen? Daniel muttered. Matthew responded with a grim expression. In the rush to secure this major deal, we neglected our usual thorough review process. Contracts of this magnitude typically undergo multiple layers of scrutiny, but in the interest of speed, we bypassed those steps. That allowed the cleverly hidden clauses to slip through unnoticed. Daniel's face turned ashen. So, what I'm saying is, Matthew continued with a stern look, our company has lost its primary revenue source and taken on immense environmental costs. In the worst-case scenario, the company's survival could be at risk. The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Daniel's legs seemed to give way, and he nearly collapsed. It's my fault. I pushed for speed. The selected team members exchanged helpless glances, their expressions filled with despair. Panic spread throughout the meeting room. News of the blunder quickly circulated throughout the company. In the hallways, colleagues whispered nervously to one another, their faces clouded with anxiety. Shouts echoed from the finance department, and the HR division reportedly convened an emergency meeting. We're going under at this rate. Are layoffs coming? What about the stock price? Voices of alarm filled the office, and the atmosphere grew heavier by the minute. In the executive suite, the directors had gathered for a crisis meeting. The heated exchanges spilling into the hallway were filled with urgency and anger. How could such a colossal mistake happen? Who's taking responsibility for this? The phones from outside kept ringing non-stop. Inquiries from clients, shareholders, and members of the press flooded in, keeping the reception desk busy. The company was engulfed in chaos, and an overwhelming sense of uncertainty loomed over everyone. Amidst the turmoil, I racked my brain, desperately searching for a way out. That's it. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number. A few days later, the conference room filled with the president and executives was heavy with tension. Daniel and Sophia also wore tense expressions. Amidst it all, I stood at the front of the conference room. The door opened, and a foreign man walked in with a confident stride. Turning to the room, I introduced him. This is Christopher. He's the president of Horizon Corporation, a major global mining company I worked with during my time overseas. Horizon Corporation. The international mining giant? I nodded toward Daniel, who wore a confused expression. Christopher responded with a gentle smile. Nice to meet you all. Michael has spoken highly of your company. Today, I've brought along my legal advisor, George, who specializes in international mining law. We hope his expertise will help resolve the issues you're currently facing. As the contract was handed to George, he immediately began to unfold it. With a sharp gaze, he quickly reviewed its contents. After a moment, he looked up, his expression serious. This contract contains clear legal violations. Specifically, clauses 7 and 12 likely conflict with international mining laws. Additionally, the provision transferring environmental obligations breaches at least 3 international treaties. Fortunately, there's still a chance to address this. I recommend initiating renegotiations with the other party as soon as possible. I'll accompany you to ensure a proper resolution. The atmosphere in the room began to shift, a sense of hope slowly taking root. But at that moment, Daniel turned to me, his voice loud and accusatory. Michael, what's the meaning of this? How do you have connections with such influential figures? His face was a mix of confusion and disbelief. Christopher, looking slightly surprised, stepped in calmly. Are you not aware of Michael's accomplishments? During his 6 years abroad, he led numerous groundbreaking projects in our industry. His innovative approaches to balancing environmental protection with mining efficiency have had a significant impact globally. Daniel's eyes widened in shock. George added, Indeed. His name frequently comes up in international conferences. He's regarded as one of the most promising young talents in the field. Daniel stared at me as if he was at a loss for words. A murmur began to spread among the other employees. At that moment, Christopher spoke again. In fact, I owe Michael a great personal debt. 3 years ago, our company faced a severe environmental crisis. The impact of our mining operations on the local community was far greater than anticipated, drawing heavy criticism from residents and environmental groups alike. He paused briefly, closing his eyes as if recalling those tense moments. Michael proposed a revolutionary solution at that time. It minimized environmental harm while increasing mining efficiency. His ideas helped us not only weather the crisis but also earn a reputation as a company committed to environmental responsibility. When he reached out for help this time, I didn't hesitate to come. For Michael, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to repay that favor. Christopher turned to me with a warm smile, his sincerity evident. The room filled with a mixture of astonishment and admiration. Christopher then addressed everyone in a composed voice. As for the renegotiation, I'll personally contact the president of the other company. With my industry connections, I'll ensure the process moves smoothly. As promised, the next day a renegotiation meeting was arranged. The opposing company's executives were visibly unsettled by Christopher's presence as the president of Horizon Corporation. George methodically pointed out the flaws in the contract and presented a revised agreement aligned with international law. Christopher leveraged his extensive industry experience to propose a new partnership framework beneficial to both parties. I utilized my overseas expertise, serving as an interpreter and providing supplementary explanations when needed. Gradually, Daniel regained his confidence and began articulating arguments to protect our company's interests. After 3 intense days of negotiations, the discussions concluded. A new contract was drafted and signed by both presidents. This agreement is now fair and compliant with the law for both parties, George declared, prompting a collective sigh of relief in the room. I glanced at Daniel. While the others celebrated, he sat slumped, his head bowed deeply. His vacant eyes seemed to stare at something far away. His hands trembled as he tried to steady himself. A pang of sympathy hit me as I watched him. Taking a deep breath, I approached him slowly. Daniel, things like this happen. At least we managed to overcome it together. That's what really matters. I spoke to him gently. Daniel slowly raised his head. In his eyes was a coldness I had never seen before. Shut up. I haven't fallen so low as to need your pity. You just want to flaunt your success, don't you? To look down on me? I don't need your charity. This is my responsibility. I don't need sympathy from someone like you. His words stung, piercing my chest like a knife. I had only wanted to encourage him, but my intentions clearly hadn't come across. At that moment, the sound of hurried footsteps reached us. Turning, I saw Sophia approaching, her expression fiery. Daniel! How can you treat Michael like this? After everything he's done to help, you can't even say a single word of thanks or apology? Both Daniel and I turned to Sophia in surprise. Her eyes blazed with anger. Daniel, you accused Michael of wasting his time overseas, didn't you? But this situation has made it crystal clear that he was achieving more than anyone else. And despite the cold treatment you've given him, he's worked hard to defend you and earn your recognition. So why? Why won't you acknowledge him? Apologize. Apologize to Michael. Daniel stood frozen, seemingly at a loss for words. The meeting room fell into a chilling silence. Every pair of eyes was now on us. Hurriedly, I placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder. Sophia, it's okay. That's enough. But... She looked up at me, startled. I smiled gently and shook my head. It's really fine. Daniel is going through a tough time right now too. Tears welled up in Sophia's eyes. Clenching her fists tightly, she spun around and left the meeting room quickly. Sophia! I hurried after her. I found her curled up in the corner of the landing by the emergency stairs. Her small frame was trembling, and I realized she was crying. An ache spread through my chest. I'm so frustrated. Michael, you're better than anyone, but you don't get the recognition you deserve, she said between sobs, her head bowed. I gently stroked her trembling back as she spoke. Her shaking only grew stronger under my touch. I've been through something similar. I've worked so hard to become a secretary trusted by Mr. Irwin. But my colleagues in the secretary department say things like, she's lucky to be pretty. She probably got promoted because of her looks. Maybe she even entertains clients at night. Even some executives have said, you're lucky you're attractive. That's why you're Mr. Irwin's favorite. They all see only my face and refuse to acknowledge my abilities. It hurts so much. But you were different. Sophia lifted her face. Her cheeks were faintly red, and her tear-filled eyes looked up at me, making my heart race. When Mr. Irwin introduced you as his son, I remember bringing tea to both of you during your first meeting. You said to me, your movements are so graceful, and this tea is excellent. It must have taken a lot of effort to perfect your skills. That's incredible. It was the first time someone noticed my abilities instead of my looks. New tears streamed down her face. That's why it hurts even more to see you not being acknowledged. Imagining how frustrated you must feel is unbearable for me. Without thinking, I gently pulled Sophia into an embrace. Her body trembled even more as she leaned into me. Sophia, thank you. But it's enough for the right people to understand me. Knowing you believe in me gives me all the strength I need. No matter what others think, as long as I have your support, that's more than enough." I slowly let go and looked directly into her eyes. Her cheeks were flushed, and tears still rolled down. But her eyes now sparkled with joy. "Let's keep working together. With you by my side, I feel stronger." Sophia nodded slowly. Then she spoke softly. "Michael, I love you." Her words flooded me with warmth and affection. Unable to hold back a smile, I gently touched her cheek. "I love you too, Sophia. I don't want to lose you to anyone else." Our gazes locked, and our lips naturally met. It was a soft, tender kiss. On that stairwell landing, we held each other close. The noise of the world, the company's issues, all of it faded away. In that moment, nothing else mattered but the two of us. There is someone who understands me. Just that made me feel like I could overcome any difficulty. The next day, Daniel and I were summoned by Mr. Irwin. After knocking on the door to his office, we heard his low voice say, "Come in." Prompted by the voice, Daniel and I stepped into the room. The sunlight streaming through the large windows illuminated Mr. Irwin's figure, giving him an air of authority. "Have a seat," he said in a calm tone. We sat on the sofa across from him. Daniel's face showed tension, and I could feel my own heart pounding in my chest. For a while, Mr. Irwin looked back and forth between the two of us, then finally spoke. "Regarding this matter, you both did well to prevent a crisis." At his words, Daniel's shoulders trembled slightly. I instinctively straightened my posture. Mr. Irwin turned his gaze to me. "Especially you, Michael. Thanks to your quick thinking and connections, we were able to avoid a major disaster." "Well done." "Thank you." I gave a small nod. Mr. Irwin then turned his gaze to Daniel. Daniel tensed up. And before Mr. Irwin could speak, he quickly bowed. "Mr. Irwin, please demote me." Startled, both Mr. Irwin and I looked at him in surprise. Lifting his head, Daniel met Mr. Irwin's eyes directly. "This entire situation is my fault. In my rush to achieve results, I pushed the project forward without sufficient scrutiny, placing the company at great risk. If Michael hadn't intervened, we would have faced irreparable damage. I don't feel I'm qualified to remain in my current position." As he spoke, he glanced briefly in my direction. Mr. Irwin crossed his arms and stared at Daniel in silence for a while. From his expression, I sensed that he was seriously considering the request. Carefully choosing my words, I decided to speak up. "Mr. Irwin, while it's true that Daniel made a significant error in judgment, I believe he has also learned a great deal from this experience." Mr. Irwin and Daniel's gazes focused on me. Daniel looked at me with a surprised expression. Daniel has acknowledged his mistake and taken responsibility for it, something that isn't easy to do. Moreover, this incident has given him first-hand experience with the complexities of international transactions. This knowledge will undoubtedly benefit our company moving forward. I firmly believe that keeping Daniel as project leader would bring the best results for us all. I spoke earnestly, meeting both of their gazes. Mr. Irwin remained silent, his arms still crossed, contemplating my words. Eventually, he nodded slowly. "Very well. Taking Michael's perspective into account, I'll forego any demotion for Daniel." His tone was calm and resolute. Daniel looked stunned for a moment, then bowed deeply. "Thank you very much. Now, both of you, continue to give your best efforts." "Yes, we will." Daniel and I replied in unison before standing and leaving the office. As we walked down the hallway, Daniel abruptly stopped a few steps ahead. He turned to face me, his brow furrowed. "Michael, why did you back me up?" His question caught me off guard. He continued, "I treated you so poorly. You must be laughing at me now, seeing me in this state." The self-mockery in his eyes was evident. I hesitated for a moment but then responded with sincerity. "Daniel, I'm not laughing. It's true that being sidelined earlier was painful. But seeing you own up to your mistakes and take responsibility has only increased my respect for you. Daniel stared at me, clearly surprised by my words. Then, his expression twisted into one of discomfort. I had a rival back in school. Someone I just couldn't stand. He was at the top of the class, a star athlete, and popular with everyone. And his father was the president of a major corporation. Every success of his felt like it was handed to him, a result of nepotism rather than his own effort. He landed a great job through connections and climbed the ranks without merit. Watching him succeed made me sick. So, I made a vow. I would rise purely on my own merit, without relying on anyone else. And I'd prove people like him wrong. Daniel's fists were trembling. I stayed silent, listening intently to his words. Daniel looked at me and let out a small scoff. It sounded different from usual, as if it carried a hint of self-mockery. That golden boy I was talking about? His name is Benjamin Irwin. Your brother. I gasped. The name he uttered was indeed my brother's. Daniel, you knew? That I'm Mr. Irwin's son? Of course. Benjamin mentioned he had a younger brother from time to time. And I knew the name of your family's company. So, when you joined the firm, it didn't take long for me to figure it out. You're his brother. His eyes revealed a mix of emotions. I was overwhelmed with shock and confusion. The sudden mention of my brother's name, and the fact that Daniel had known my true identity from the beginning. Everything was an unexpected turn of events. Daniel, if I may, about my brother. Before I could finish, he raised a hand to stop me. His expression softened, his gaze nostalgic. At first, I dismissed Benjamin as just another privileged son riding his father's coattails. But over time, I began to see how hard he worked. His sharp questions in class, the meticulous detail in his reports, his relentless effort in sports, he gave everything his all. And I started to see those efforts paying off firsthand. His voice quivered slightly as he spoke. That's when I got scared. Admitting Benjamin's competence meant confronting my own inadequacies. It was easier to dismiss him as a golden boy, a product of nepotism, than to face my insecurities. Labeling him was my way of running away. He looked me straight in the eye. His expression filled with regret. I was at a loss for words. Daniel's candid confession left me unsure of how to respond. After a moment of silence, I took a deep breath and spoke. My brother once said something after graduating college. He told me he wanted to face you on equal footing. He hated how people assumed his achievements were because of our father's name. It frustrated him so much that he refused to join this company. He said he'd had enough of being called a golden boy and took a job at a different firm instead. Daniel's eyes widened. Slowly, a bitter smile crept across his face. That's just like Benjamin. He's always been straightforward and fair. Of course, he'd want to succeed on his own terms. Daniel spoke as if reminiscing. Hearing his words, I couldn't help but smile. Unable to contain the emotions welling up inside me, I continued quietly. Honestly, I wasn't planning to join this company either. But do you remember that time you visited my house? It was a year after you started working. And my brother invited some classmates over to catch up. I snuck into the gathering unnoticed. Daniel looked surprised. I remember you talking about a challenging project you were assigned 6 months into your job, the one no one else wanted to take on. You said you were terrified but studied relentlessly and eventually succeeded. You said, no matter how tough a challenge is, perseverance always opens a path. And in the process, you grow as a person. You also spoke passionately about how nurturing new employees builds the future of the company, and how important it is to always keep learning. I looked at him with genuine admiration. That passion for your work, your dedication to others, and your drive for self-improvement deeply move me. I thought, I want to work with this person. I want to learn from him. That's why I'm here today. Because of you, Daniel. I wanted to grow alongside you. When I finished speaking, silence fell between us. I saw tears welling up in Daniel's eyes, rolling down his cheeks. Michael. His voice broke as he closed his eyes briefly. When he reopened them, they shone with a mix of regret and determination. I'm sorry. I completely misunderstood you. I projected my biases and saw Benjamin shadowing you. But despite that, I slowly approached Daniel, who was at a loss for words. The past doesn't matter. What's important is what we do moving forward. Daniel met my gaze directly. Gratitude filled his expression, and he nodded firmly. Yeah, you're right. Michael, let's truly work together from now on. Let's complement each other's strengths and weaknesses and build the best team we can. His trembling hand reached out toward me. Without hesitation, I grasped it firmly. Yes, Daniel. I'm looking forward to it. The moment we shook hands, I felt the walls of misunderstanding and prejudice that had stood between us for years crumble away. At the same time, a new bond of trust and mutual understanding began to form, strong and unyielding. Standing in the hallway, both Daniel and I wore expressions filled with hope for the future. Soon after, I joined a major project as a new team member. Then weeks passed. In the conference room, the team, led by Daniel, gathered around, engaged in passionate discussions. Michael, I'll leave the negotiations with the overseas clients to you. Understood. I'll leverage my connections and experience to secure the best terms. I nodded Daniel's words. With each passing day, our collaboration grew more seamless. Daniel's meticulous domestic strategies combined beautifully with my international insights, and the project progressed smoothly. However, one day, we hit a major obstacle. During the geological survey of the proposed mining site, an unexpected fault line was discovered. This raised serious concerns about the safety of the extraction process and the likelihood that the local government would deny the development permit. Ensuring safety while moving forward required a significant overhaul of the initial plan. However, at this rate, we won't meet the deadline. One team member said, unable to hide their anxiety. At that moment, Daniel stood up and looked directly at me. Michael, do you have any ideas? I paused for a moment, then responded. Yes, I learned a method during my time overseas. It allows us to ensure safety and efficient mining simultaneously. First, we use advanced 3D geological mapping technology to obtain detailed information about the fault structure. Based on that data, we employ AI-assisted real-time optimization of mining plans. Additionally, we involve local geologists and mining experts, integrating their expertise. This approach ensures both safety and productivity while fostering a positive relationship with the local government. But will this method allow us to meet the deadline? Daniel asked sharply. I answered with confidence. Yes. By running safety assessments and mining planning in parallel, and using the latest simulation technology to accelerate scenario testing, we can make up for lost time. Daniel's eyes sparkled with interest. An innovative approach. But what about the cost? There will be some initial investment, but in the long term, we'll save on potential accident risks and productivity losses, making it cost-effective overall. The room buzzed with excitement and anticipation. Daniel stood up and gave me a firm pat on the shoulder. All right, let's go with it. Michael, I'm putting you in charge of this initiative. With resolve, I nodded. Understood. I'll ensure its success. After days and nights of tireless effort by the entire team, the project was a resounding success. We delivered a high-quality product, ahead of schedule. We did it, Daniel. I reported excitedly. He responded with a broad smile. Indeed, it was a team effort. But your contributions, Michael, were especially significant. The success of this project had a profound impact on the company. Revenue increased by 120% compared to the previous year, and we secured several new clients. The atmosphere within the company transformed, brimming with energy and optimism. Michael, thank you. It's been an honor working with you. The honor's all mine, Daniel. Working alongside you has been truly inspiring. I answered Daniel's words while scratching my head awkwardly. One evening at dusk, I was called to the president's office, or I gazed at the back of Mr. Irwin, or my father, standing by the window. Michael, I'm considering you for the position of the next president. What do you think? My father slowly turned around. His words made me catch my breath for a moment. But what about my brother? Benjamin is thriving at another company. I hear he's about to be promoted to department head. It seems he's found a path he wants to follow. That's why I've decided to entrust this company to you, Michael. I hesitated, conflicted. But I resolved to be honest about my feelings. I do want to make this company better. But honestly, I'm not confident that I'm ready to be president yet. My father smiled gently at my response. Not having confidence is actually a good mindset. Leading a company means bearing the responsibility for the livelihoods of all its employees. It's not something anyone should feel overly confident about. But I believe you have what it takes. Your overseas experience, your recent success on the project, and the trust you've built with the employees all demonstrate that. I looked down, reflecting on his words. It was true. I had learned and grown a lot. But I still felt there was much more I needed to achieve. There's no need to rush. You have time. But I want you to prepare yourself for when the time comes. My father's voice resonated gently. I lifted my head and met his gaze directly. Understood. I still have so much to learn, but I want to make this company a place where every employee can feel happier. I'll work as hard as I can to make that happen. My father's eyes filled with pride and relief. Good. Keep observing with your own eyes, listening with your own ears, and feeling with your own heart as you continue to learn about this company. I believe in you. Thank you, Dad. I bowed deeply. As I exited the president's office, I found Sophia waiting for me in the hallway. She approached, her face filled with concern. What was the meeting about? There was a hint of nervousness in Sophia's voice. I scratched my head awkwardly, feeling a bit embarrassed. He asked if I was ready to become the next president. I see. Sophia's eyes widened in surprise. We started walking side by side. The soft glow of the setting sun streaming through the hallway. Are you feeling the pressure? Yeah, honestly, I am. But I'm ready to give it my best shot. In response to Sophia's quiet question, I answered honestly. Sophia suddenly stopped and took my hand. My heart skipped a beat. No matter what position you take, I'll always be by your side. In both your personal and professional life, I'll be with you. Her words made me blush. Perhaps realizing this, Sophia's smile brightened as her cheeks also turned rosy. I gently squeezed her hand in return. Thank you. With you by my side, I feel like I can overcome anything. Standing there in the golden light of the sunset, we gazed into each other's eyes. Naturally, our lips drew closer, meeting in a tender kiss. Hand in hand, we began walking again. Let's keep giving it our all, Michael. Yeah, let's face it all together. With Sophia speaking cheerfully, I responded with a smile. The challenges ahead, surely, we can face them together. No, we can overcome them with everyone in this company. With that conviction and a heart full of happiness, we left the office as the evening sky stretched above us. My reconciliation with Daniel had taught me the importance of shedding preconceived notions and understanding the essence of others. Sophia's presence reminded me of the profound value of having someone who truly understands and supports you. At the same time, I came to understand the difficulty and importance of accurately recognizing the worth of others. Honing your skills and building sincere relationships are inseparable. With these two elements, I believe any obstacle can be overcome. I will continue to learn and grow, striving to achieve true success in every sense of the word. My name is Brian, and I'm 55 years old. I work for a major piano school. That said, I'm not a full-time employee. I work part-time, 4 days a week. Why am I working part-time at my age, you ask? Well, let's save that story for later. I first encountered the piano when I was 3 years old. One day, my mother took me to visit a friend's house. There was a piano in that house. Her friend, Susan, had graduated from a music college and opened her own private piano school, but she temporarily closed it when she had a baby. She had planned to reopen the school once her child grew older, but for various reasons, she gave up on the idea. Afterward, she used her kindergarten teacher's certification to accompany children's songs and activities, something she truly enjoyed. When I visited, Susan would play popular children's songs or exercise music from that time for me. Naturally, I was overjoyed. It's rare to see Brian so excited. Did you know he liked music this much? Don't you play music at home? Of course I do. I played all kinds of music for him, even when I was pregnant. Like what? Vivaldi's Four Seasons, or, Mozart's Ein, and something? Ein klein Nacht music, you mean? Those are violin pieces. Maybe Brian just likes the sound of the piano. Exactly. That's right. As expected of Susan. She truly has an ear for distinction. Brian's got excellent rhythm, too. Do you think he might have perfect pitch? No way. You know how tone-deaf both my husband and I are. Parents' bad singing doesn't pass down to their kids. You might want to test him when he gets older. Oblivious to their conversation, I danced wildly to the rhythm, giggling with glee. If he likes it this much, maybe I should have him take piano lessons. It's too early for that. For now, just bring him over to my house to play. And so, I started tagging along with my mother to Susan's house almost every week. Susan introduced me to all kinds of music. She played everything from children's songs to theme songs from robot anime. Sometimes, at my mother's request, she would play classical pieces by Bach, Beethoven, Chopin, or Debussy. Every piece was fun, beautiful, and felt like magic flowing from Susan's fingertips. My favorite was Liszt's La Campanella. I loved its bouncing notes and would twirl around to the rhythm. Brian, you have such a taste for challenging pieces. The other day, you were completely mesmerized by Alcan's Concerto. Alcan's Concerto is concerto for piano solo, which is very difficult to play. It's a concerto played on just one piano. Intense, fast-paced, so complex it made my head spin. Every note of Alcan's Concerto felt like it twisted my brain. The intricate finger movements seemed like they would tangle, and the sound pouring out felt almost overwhelming. For my young self, it was thrilling beyond words. What is this? I thought, utterly captivated. Even Susan seemed to find the piece challenging, so I ended up watching recordings of televised performances over and over again. I couldn't help but feel a bitter envy toward the pianist, who played those torrential notes with a calm, effortless expression. How is this person playing so easily? If they can do it, then so can I. Why did I believe that? Kids are fearless. Looking back now, I shiver at the audacity of my ambitions, but it was this bold determination that set me on the path of the piano. By the time I entered elementary school, my parents bought me a piano, and I started formal lessons. Naturally, my teacher was Susan. Since she was busy with work during the week, my lessons were limited to 3 hours every Saturday. I wanted to go every day, but it wasn't feasible. She had her own schedule, and her house wasn't close enough for me to go on my own. My mother worked part-time too, so weekends were the only time she could take me. To make up for it, I practiced at home every day. Fortunately, we lived in a detached house in the countryside, with some distance from our neighbors. There was sound leakage, but since I mostly played in the evenings, no one ever complained. In fact, some neighbors even praised me. "Brian, did you start learning piano? You're so dedicated with your practice, it's impressive. It's fun hearing you get better day by day." Some people even say things like that, and I've become a bit of a local celebrity. I've got to get even better so I can earn more praise. With those thoughts driving me, my passion for the piano only grew stronger. Can you play that one next time? Liszt's La Campanella. When someone said that to me, I immediately replied, "That's impossible." I was happy to find someone who liked the same piece, but with my small, elementary school hands, that piece was out of reach. I simply couldn't master it. It'll take at least 5 years. When asked if I'd be able to play it after 5 years, all I could do was hedge with, "Well, maybe." Still, I thought, one day I'll play it. I have to play it. And so, my obsession with the piano deepened. Through middle school, high school, it was piano, piano, piano. Playing the piano is so girly. Some classmates would say, throwing misguided jeers my way, but I didn't let it bother me. "Your ignorance is embarrassing. Try educating yourself." I used to say things like that and end up making people upset. That wasn't right of me. I regret it now. I aim to attend a music university, but music schools are expensive. Compared to violin or flute, piano costs are a bit more manageable. But serious training with a skilled professional still requires a significant investment. Even competition entry fees can be exorbitant. We were an average family at the general standard. We weren't wealthy at all. I dreamed of attending a top-tier music university in the country, but that required a full scholarship. To earn that, I needed to place highly in major competitions. Without top-level achievements, the dream of a tuition-free scholarship would remain just that, a dream. So, I devoted myself to daily practice. Evening practice wasn't enough. I practiced in the mornings and at night too. By then, I was already skilled enough that no one minded the sound of the piano. If anything, people were happy to see my growth. "Brian, you've gotten so good. You're practically a professional pianist now. Really, you've grown so much. I'm feeling old just thinking about it. So, when's your big debut?" Some people were surprisingly eager, and I remember signing about 3 autographs for them. Thanks to the support of my neighbors, I managed to win the gold prize in the country's largest piano competition. This secured my spot as a scholarship student. Once I entered university, my life became completely consumed by the piano. For someone who loved it as much as I did, it was a dream come true. However, even with tuition covered, there were still expenses for rent, food, and the study materials. My parents covered the rent, and I received some allowance from them, but competitions will only increase from now on. There will probably be opportunities for overseas training as well. I'm going to need a significant amount of money. So, I found part-time jobs that wouldn't interfere with my piano practice. First, I started with customer service in the food and beverage industry. I worked as a server at a small, old cafe run by an elderly couple. This opportunity came at the recommendation of one of my professors. "Brian, you don't smile much. You spend so much time staring at the keys, but to truly perform well, you need to empathize with the composer and connect with their emotions. Music comes from within. You should work on expressing your emotions more. Why not try a part-time job where you can interact with people, like in customer service?" That's how I ended up at the cafe. It was close to campus, and many people in the music world frequented the place, so I heard all kinds of fascinating stories. Over time, my network grew, my knowledge expanded, and I even started smiling more. One day, the owner said to me, "Brian, I know someone looking for a piano teacher for their child, a grade schooler. Would you be interested?" Honestly, I didn't feel ready. I was still a student myself, and the thought of teaching someone else felt daunting. But when I consulted my professor, he encouraged me. "Why not? You've won a gold prize in a national competition. And you're getting better at interacting with people. This is a great opportunity. Give it a try." With his support, I decided to teach piano to the elementary schooler. Once I started, I realized how incredibly difficult it was. "No, not like that. That's wrong. Why can't they get this?" Watching someone struggle to play was far more frustrating than I had anticipated. I quickly hit a wall in my teaching ability, and ultimately, I was asked to step down. I felt too ashamed to face the cafe owner or my professor. It happens. Playing and teaching are two entirely different skills. We're all still learning. Even so, I couldn't shake my frustration at my own shortcomings. Determined to improve, I quit my part-time job and threw myself into practicing piano even harder. Occasionally, I worked as a hired pianist in seedy bars, more for a change of pace than anything else. The bars were full of drunk patrons who barely paid attention to the music. When someone did listen, they'd make requests for old ballads or the latest pop songs. Occasionally, someone in the audience would actually pay attention and say, "Hey, play that song," requesting old ballads or popular hits of the time. At first, I hated it and refused outright. "This isn't a concert hall or a hotel lounge," I was told. "If a customer requests a song, you play it. That's your job. If you don't like it, then quit." It hurt my pride to play trendy pop songs, but I wasn't ready to return to teaching either. It was an era when music played everywhere, in stores and on the streets. I picked up those tunes by ear and played them as the customers requested. Looking back, it was a valuable experience. The unfamiliar melodies were fresh and deeply moving. So, there's this kind of music too. Those discoveries broadened my musical horizons and even nourished my soul a little. By my third year of college, I had gained enough time and confidence to try teaching piano again. This time, I approached it differently, recalling how Susan had taught me. I focused on drilling the fundamentals. This method turned out to be helpful not just for my students but for me as well. Revisiting the basics enriched my sound. The fullness of tone I achieved confirmed that a solid foundation, built in childhood, truly makes a difference. Keep it up, future pianists of the world. With that sentiment in mind, I devoted myself to teaching. When a child felt like crying from frustration with practice, I'd play a piece from their favorite anime to keep them interested. This approach became popular, and before I knew it, I was teaching piano to children from several families. After graduating from university, I looked overseas for my next step. A university professor who had heard my performance at a competition reached out to me. I threw myself into studying a foreign language, honing my piano skills, and finally made my way to my dream destination abroad. Hearing this story, some might think, what a brilliant career, despite the ups and downs. But here I am, 55 years old, working part-time. It's not exactly something to brag about. I currently work at a well-known, nationwide piano school. This school boasts an impressive roster of instructors, many of whom are award winners from prestigious competitions. And the standard of teaching is exceptionally high. The average age of the instructors is around their mid-30s. I haven't entered competitions in the past few years, but I still keep up with the latest information. The instructors here are all top-level pianists, many with high rankings in major competitions. The students are lucky to be taught by such talent. Of course, having a staff of such renown means tuition isn't cheap. Still, given the school's reputation and location, it attracts many affluent families. Some students even request specific instructors by name. Many instructors are also active performers, often unavailable for lessons due to concert tours. As a result, the school is always hiring to fill gaps. This year, a new employee joined us, a graduate from an elite national music university. Her name is Emily, and I heard she graduated at the top of her class from the leading national music university I had once given up on. What a reliable and promising newcomer we have. She's close in age to the kids, and she'll likely share insights into the latest trends in piano education. Naturally, I had high hopes for her. But those hopes were crushed the moment we met. As soon as she saw me, she said, "Are you the janitor? There's some trash over there." No hello, no nice to meet you. Why the commanding tone right out of the gate? Is this how young people act these days? I am thoroughly confused. No, I'm one of the instructors here. My name is Brian. Nice to meet you. What? An instructor? How old are you? The interrogation began. I'm 55. Why? 55? What era did you graduate from? And by the way, your photo wasn't in the school brochure. She must have been referring to the brochure that introduces the school and its staff. Seriously, I'm introducing myself here. And she's just ignoring me? I'm part-time, so my photo isn't included in the brochure. Part-time? At 55? That's ridiculous. Ridiculous or not, I'm standing right here, aren't I? Do you even know where you are? This is the Premia Piano School every music student dreams of. And you're part-time? At 55? Aren't you embarrassed? Why should I be embarrassed? Her logic made no sense to me. You are Emily, right? Perhaps you could try speaking more calmly and respectfully when addressing others. And why should I listen to an old man like you? Mind your own business. Don't talk to me. She might not want to talk to me, but I still had to hand over responsibilities to her as part of her onboarding process. After all, Emily was hired as my replacement. But could she really handle the role? Emily is incredibly talented. She was a rising star as a pianist, destined for greatness. For some reason, she chose to work here. Take good care of her. Despite his confidence, I wasn't so sure. No matter how skilled she was at playing, this was a piano school. The students were children. Could she handle teaching them? I felt uneasy, but when it's an order from the director, you have no choice but to comply. Emily, you'll be taking over my students. No way. Excuse me? I'm not teaching the low-level kiddies you've been handling. Why should I, a graduate of the country's top music university, waste my time on them? It was as if a child was criticizing other children. Was this projection from a similar mental maturity? Could it be that Mr. Harrison's judgment is starting to waver? I can't help but feel a tinge of unease. Those kiddies are your students now. Teach them the basics of piano. You want me to teach the basics? Me, who swept through countless competitions. Yes, Emily. Your achievements are impressive, no doubt. But there are instructors here with even greater accomplishments and more experience. Here, you're at the bottom of the hierarchy. You need to understand that. Emily glared at me as if I'd insulted her ancestors. I don't need a lecture from you, old man. She snorted and stormed off. There wasn't much I could do but hope she'd understand in time. For now, I gathered the student materials and placed them on Emily's desk. I attach a note that says, "Please review this before the lesson." 20 minutes before her first lesson, I waited outside the classroom to discuss things with her. On her first day, I wanted to make sure everything was clear before the lesson began. But the moment she spotted me, she turned and walked the other way. Emily. Even when I called out, she never turned around and just disappeared, leaving me no chance to talk to her. Left with no choice, I waited outside the classroom door. Finally, 10 minutes before the lesson, she showed up. Emily, cutting it a bit close, don't you think? Emily, are you listening? I don't have time to listen to a part-time worker. It's about the handover. Did you review the materials I left for you? I did. Your first student today is Madeline. I said I read it. Leave me alone. Well, even so. Enough. Know your place. Don't act so self-important just because you're a part-timer. Part-time, part-time. Didn't she understand that in music, every part matters? Just then, Madeline arrived. Brian, hello. Hello, Madeline. This is Emily. She'll be teaching you from now on. Emily? Hello, I'm Madeline. Your lesson is starting. Get in the classroom. What happened to basic greetings? I couldn't help but wonder what kind of lesson she was going to give. The worry gnawed at me. I really wanted to step into the classroom to observe, but I didn't want to make Madeline nervous. Besides, even if I asked, Emily would never allow it. She graduated from the country's top music university. And as the valedictorian, surely, she's well-versed in fundamental teaching methods. I decide to trust her and let her handle it. Suppressing my anxiety, I quietly leave the classroom. The 1-hour lesson ends, and it's time for the students to switch. I head back to the classroom and wait for Madeline to come out. Madeline, great job. How was the lesson? She didn't look happy. Were those tears in her eyes? What's wrong, Madeline? Were you nervous with the new teacher? Madeline has a tendency to be shy, especially around adults. That's why I emphasize the importance of being careful with her choice of words. I wonder if Emily paid attention to it. I had written it down in red ink on the note. I'm fine. Thank you. Madeline replied with a brave smile before heading home. Still, I couldn't shake my concern. Emily, can we talk for a moment? No. What? No? Can't she do something about her choice of words? She really should tone down her condescending attitude. Ignoring it, I step into the classroom. Madeline looked like she was about to cry. Did something happen? Nothing. I noted that she's sensitive to harsh tones. Did you take that into account? Do you have any proof that I spoke harshly? No, but this is a lesson. Of course, the tone might get a little firm. Well, even so. The next student is coming. Get out. I was forcibly ushered out of the room. While I was deliberating on what to do, the next student, Marcus, arrived. Hi, Brian. Hey, Marcus. Good to see you. You'll have a new teacher today. Got it. I wonder what kind of teacher she is. I'm excited. I watched as Marcus, full of enthusiasm, entered the classroom. An hour later, Marcus comes out, his lips pressed into a tight line. He looks frustrated, maybe even unfairly treated, and is trying desperately to hold back his tears. I've never seen Marcus like this before. Marcus, what's wrong? I called out to him, but he took off at full speed. The 3 students after him also left with dark expressions. This was bad. I needed to have a serious conversation with Emily. Emily, I'll be observing all your lessons tomorrow. Absolutely not. It's not up for debate. I'll speak with Mr. Harrison to make sure this isn't a problem. Well, I'll just tell him I can't focus on lessons with you in the room. This was getting us nowhere. I brought it up with Mr. Harrison, but he said, maybe the kids were more nervous because you were in the room. It's their first day. So they were just a little tense. They'll be fine next time. How carefree of him. Since Mr. Harrison said that, there's nothing more I can do. Whatever happens, don't say I didn't warn you. I gave a proper warning, after all. And just as I feared, more and more kids stopped coming to lessons. Recently, my child hasn't wanted to go to lessons. They used to love the piano and always looked forward to it. I don't think the new teacher is a good fit. Mr. Bryan, could you teach my child again? The complaints kept piling up, so I discreetly began investigating. What I found was troubling. Emily's teaching style wasn't just strict, it bordered on intimidation. One parent, disturbed by their child's behavior after lessons, had secretly recorded a session. When I listened to the recording, I was horrified. That's not what I told you. Why can't you even do this? I already said that won't work for competitions. Do you think you'll get anywhere playing like that? Why aren't you following instructions? Do you think you'll ever make it as a professional this way? This wasn't teaching, it was berating. Many piano students are sensitive by nature. This kind of approach could crush their spirits. The soundproofed classrooms meant no one outside could hear what was happening. So no one realized how she was conducting her lessons. But ignorance wasn't an excuse. This was a failure on my part as well. Still, as much as I wanted to step in, I was no longer in a position to teach. Emily needed to adapt and succeed in her role. But any attempt to talk to her was met with outright rejection. I don't need advice from a part-timer. Frustrated, I turned to Mr. Harrison again. Mr. Harrison, could you please talk to her? She won't listen to me. She told me you didn't provide a proper handover and that's why she's struggling. Excuse me? I put together a proper set of materials for the handover, complete with a memo containing my personal observations. It detailed who each student is and what they excel at. I even included notes on their finger technique habits and recommended practice methods. She refused to let me explain it, but if she actually read through the materials, there wouldn't be a single issue. That's how thorough and flawless the handover document was. Don't mess with me. Emily, don't lie. Did you actually read the handover materials I provided? Yes, I read them. Then why are your lessons the way they are? I have my own way of teaching. Stop interfering. Some students are here to compete and win prizes, but others are here simply because they love the piano and want to enjoy playing. Adjust your teaching to suit their goals. I am adjusting. Then why are so many students leaving your lessons looking upset or on the verge of tears? How should I know? Maybe they just don't have the grit. If they're breaking down over this, they'll never make it to the top. She wasn't wrong that rising to the top requires tremendous effort and resilience. I've lived that experience myself, pouring my heart and soul into reaching this point. She's probably the same way. I get that. But that's the mindset of someone with a strong determination to become a professional. It's unreasonable to expect the same from elementary or middle school students. Time continued to pass without resolution. At this piano school, we held regular recitals featuring the instructors. These weren't formal concerts but open events in a public space at the shopping mall. Anyone could listen for free. The goal was to introduce more people to music while also promoting the school. Many regular attendees looked forward to these performances, and the space was always packed with spectators. This time, the recital served as an introduction for our new instructor, Emily, who was set to perform. The day of the recital arrived. As expected of an elite music school graduate, Emily delivered a technically brilliant performance, demonstrating her seasoned stage presence. But something felt rigid. Her playing lacked warmth, roundness in the notes that would have made her performance truly captivating. It was a shame. Her style was precise, befitting someone of her caliber, but it felt overly mechanical, almost clinical. The music adhered strictly to the score, but it lacked the interpretative nuance that breathes life into a piece. If it were me, I'd play it this way. I thought to myself as her performance ended. Wait. There were supposed to be 2 more pieces in her set. Why was she stopping now? Puzzled, I watched as she turned to the audience and said something shocking. Next, we have a performance by my esteemed senior, Brian." What? What was she talking about? I wasn't scheduled to perform. What was this woman doing? Emily steps off the stage and walks toward me. With a smile full of sarcasm, she said, "Aren't you an instructor too, even if only part-time? I thought I'd give you the chance to stand on such a grand stage. After all, you probably never get this kind of opportunity. Go ahead, show us what you've got." Unbelievably, Emily forced me to play the piano. She probably thinks I'm only capable of playing simple parts due to my lack of skill. She's clearly trying to humiliate me in front of an audience. I have my pride too. If she wanted a show, I'd give her one. Fine. I'll play something. Watch closely, Emily. With that, I decided to play seriously, throwing my heart and soul into it. The piece? Liszt's La Campanella. One of my all-time favorites. I took a deep breath, straightened my posture, and placed my fingers on the keys. Softly, delicately, I began. My fingers danced lightly across the keyboard, building momentum with a rhythmic elegance. Gradually picking up speed, my fingers dart busily across the keys. The lively rhythm is wonderfully satisfying. The audience lets out an impressed "Oh." It seems everyone is beginning to be enchanted by my tone. When I glance at Emily from the corner of my eye, I almost burst out laughing. What kind of face is that? Her jaw's about to drop off. Emily's eyes are wide open, her mouth agape, utterly stunned. Getting more amused, I proceed to perform Islany. A piece so challenging that Balakirev himself lamented it was beyond his own ability to play. Even a piece demanding such extraordinary technique becomes a boundless realm of freedom in my hands. My mind drifted to the Caucasus as I became fully immersed in the cascading sounds flowing from the keyboard. Phew! This piece always drains me. But before I could catch my breath, the room erupted into thunderous applause. The audience rose to their feet, giving me a standing ovation. No. No way. How can a part-time old man play like that? Emily is the only one who looks stunned and completely panicked. The audience, swept away by the music, erupts into thunderous applause and cheers. The brilliance of the technique seems to have come across, but the kids just stare blankly. It was clearly too advanced for them. Composing myself, I start playing the theme song from a recent mega-hit anime. A song loved by people of all ages, it instantly captivates everyone in the room. I follow it with the movie version's theme song, finish my performance, and step off the stage. That was amazing. They played that song. I know it. Yeah, they were so good. The audience, still smiling, leaves the venue while exchanging such conversations. Seeing their happy faces, I couldn't help but smile. Music truly is wonderful. The piano is such a beautiful instrument. Why? Why? How can a part-time old man play such difficult pieces? Still stunned, Emily listens as I reveal the secret. After graduating from university, I enrolled at the Royal Academy of Music. Not because I had a specific teacher I wanted to study under, honestly, it was just because it sounded prestigious. Almost immediately, I regretted my decision. The academy was overflowing with geniuses, and to stand out required relentless, grueling effort. Over the years, I developed respectable technical skills and even placed in renowned international competitions. But something felt wrong. At some point, piano stopped being a source of joy. It became a mere tool for climbing the ladder of success. How could such music evoke genuine emotion? My sound grew dull, losing its warmth. I became nothing more than a mechanical piano player, hitting the right notes but lacking any soul. Inevitably, I faced failure. Though I had turned professional, audiences quickly grew bored of my uninspired performances, and I faded into obscurity. At my lowest point, when I thought I'd lost everything, Mr. Harrison reached out to me. "Brian, you need to find joy in music again." Children's music is wonderful, it's pure, without pretension or vanity. Just the simple, genuine love for sound. Why don't you come work with us? Initially, I saw it as nothing more than a way to make some pocket money. But as I taught, I remembered something important. Music is supposed to be fun. Piano is supposed to bring joy. Sure, building a foundation can be tough, but beyond that lies delight and ecstasy. What does it matter if you can play difficult pieces? Technical mastery alone won't move hearts. The children are simply enjoying the music they love. Their finger movements and sight reading are all over the place, but their eyes shine, and their whole bodies are filled with joy. Yes, this is it. Just enjoying the sound, purely and simply. That's what music is all about. When I realized this, teaching children became a source of immense joy. In hindsight, I had taken quite a roundabout journey to get here. For students aiming to win competitions, yes, structured and disciplined playing is necessary. But for those who simply love piano and want to enjoy it, we should let them play freely. Forcing rigid methods on them and making them hate piano would defeat the purpose. Our job is to nurture their love for music and help them discover their own unique sound. That's what I believe we should be doing. Hearing this, Emily broke down in tears. Because no one ever said that to me before. It was always, practice more, get better, aim higher. They kept pushing me and pushing me. And then they said my sound was boring. It's just too cruel. By conforming to the expectations and pressures around her, she had lost her musical freedom. She couldn't become a professional or join the orchestra she had dreamed of. This teaching job had been her last resort. She was another victim of misguided instruction. Then you understand, don't you? What you're doing now is exactly what you hated being done to you. Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. Then let's change that. Why not guide the children to do what you always wanted to do yourself? You could be the one to help them find joy in music. I know you can do it. I understand. Emily nodded sincerely, finally letting her guard down. I had chosen to work part-time so I could teach in a way that didn't conform to rigid manuals. I wanted to focus on individual needs and foster a personal connection with each student. Next month, I'll be taking over as the school's director. This means I'll no longer be able to teach private lessons. I explained this to Emily clearly. When I become the director, I plan to give our lessons more flexibility. Instead of students saying, I improved my technique because of this school, I want them to say, I loved coming here. I fell even more in love with the piano. That's the kind of environment I want to create. Will you help me? Are you sure you want me? After all the times I mocked you and called you a part-time old man. True, that was tough to hear. But now you understand, right? Yes. Then that's all that matters. Let's leave the past behind and focus on moving forward. Speaking of which, can we discuss tomorrow's lesson plans? Yes, please. The more someone understands pain and suffering, the kinder they can become. That's what I believe. Emily had likely built walls around herself to avoid further hurt. I don't want to be mocked. That determination had led to her arrogance. But who hasn't gone through such a phase? I've been there myself and suffered the consequences, so I understand it well. Emily, in a way, was still a child, someone who needed a guiding hand to help her find her footing. I have 55 years of knowledge and experience. I'll share it all with her, sparing nothing. One day, I'm certain Emily will become one of the finest instructors this school has ever seen. Together, as two imperfect individuals supporting each other, I hope we can help our students achieve their big dreams. If you can solve even one, I'll give you a big reward. Let's see, I'll do whatever you ask. At the middle school reunion, Rachel, a stunning former classmate who went on to become a Miss Tokyo University, challenged me with 3 difficult puzzles. For some reason, she seemed to dislike me even back in school, and now she sneered at me mockingly, clearly belittling me as someone who only graduated middle school. Her expression made it obvious, she thought I stood no chance. But oh, sorry. I already solved them all. What? Actually, you know. Hearing the truth about me, she froze in disbelief. Now, what kind of reward should I ask for? My name is Terrence. I'm a perfectly ordinary 30-year-old office worker. Today, I've returned to my hometown for the first time in 15 years. As I strolled through streets that had changed so much, a sense of nostalgia crept in, and before I knew it, I'd arrived at today's destination. I guess it's natural to feel a little nervous. I haven't seen anyone since we graduated. The reason I came back today was for a middle school reunion. Apparently, it was organized by some of the more outgoing classmates, using the milestone of 15 years as an excuse. Which means, she must have been involved too, huh? She was my middle school classmate, Rachel. Rachel's father was a CEO of a company so well known in the area that everyone had heard of him, and being his daughter, Rachel was the quintessential rich girl. On top of that, she was brilliant, athletic, and strikingly beautiful, a woman so flawless that finding her faults was harder than admiring her qualities. With all those traits, my impression of her was always, she lives in a different world and she has nothing to do with me. Because of that, I never made an effort to interact with her, but there were two things about Rachel that had puzzled me since middle school. First, why did she attend the same school as me? I went to a typical public middle school with no entrance exams or prestige to speak of. Given her excellent grades and the stature of her family, it was odd for someone like Rachel to attend such a school. Second, why did she always pick on me so relentlessly? It wasn't just casual teasing. She'd make cutting remarks like, "How do you even manage to score that low? You should teach me the secret." Or, "Not only are you bad at studying, but you're weak too, how pathetic." She'd purposely challenge me with difficult questions I couldn't possibly answer, only to ridicule me when I failed. Strangely, though, this always happened when no one else was around. Maybe it was her way of keeping up appearances, but who knows? On top of that, there were moments when she'd glare at me with an intensity that felt almost like hatred. I could have just asked her why, back then, but honestly, with someone so hostile, what good would it have done? Since this reunion was planned by the popular kids, it was almost certain Rachel would be there. With a mix of anxiety about her potential hostility and curiosity about her true intentions, I headed to the venue. When I stepped inside, over 20 people had already arrived, and the room was lively despite being a little early. This atmosphere feels nostalgic, though I can't recognize anyone. As I scanned the room, a striking sight caught my attention. A woman surrounded by a crowd, exuding elegance that could rival a movie star. It took me a second to realize who she was, but watching her interact with the others quickly jogged my memory. Rachel. Still the same, no, even more graceful now. Every move she makes feels like a scene from a drama. She still seems like someone from another world. As I thought this, Rachel noticed me. After excusing herself from the group, she approached me. "Terrence, right? Long time no see." "Yeah, it's been a while. Do you remember me? Rachel, right?" Spotting me and coming over so suddenly, "What's this about? You're as cold as ever." "Well, whatever. There's something I've wanted to ask you if we ever met again." "Something to ask me?" "Yeah. Near the end of middle school, why did you suddenly stop coming to school?" Hearing her question, memories from 15 years ago came rushing back to me. I didn't want to remember it, those bitter memories I had tried so hard to forget. The reason I stopped going to school near the end of middle school lay in both family circumstances and myself. My father ran a small diner in our town. It wasn't wildly successful, but it was beloved by the local regulars. Originally, my father ran the diner by himself, but when I was young, he remarried. After that, my father and my stepmother managed the business together. However, everything changed when a shopping mall opened nearby. Already struggling with declining customers, our diner was dealt a fatal blow. By the time I was in the third year of middle school, my parents decided to close the diner and move back to the countryside to help my grandparents with farming. My father explained that the mall's presence had made it impossible to keep the business afloat. But a few days after they decided to close the diner, I overheard a conversation between my parents that revealed the real reason. "Hey, are you sure about closing the diner? We still have loyal customers." "Yeah, I wish we didn't have to close. There are people who love our food." "Then why?" "But it's true that we're losing business. That mall will only get bigger, and when it does, we'll lose even more customers. Keeping the diner open just isn't realistic anymore. And besides, there's Terrence to think about." "You're right. His episodes have been more frequent lately. I'd had a chronic condition since I was a kid. That said, it wasn't anything serious enough to require hospitalization. It was manageable as long as I took the proper medication. But by the time I reached my third year of middle school, my symptoms had worsened, and I started missing school frequently. That's why moving to a more rural environment will be better. There's a good doctor there, too. It's the right time to make this change. It's hard to say goodbye, but for Terrence's sake, it's the best choice." And so, my family moved to the countryside right after I graduated middle school. By the end of the school year, my condition had deteriorated to the point where I stopped going to school altogether. It hit me hard when I realized I was the reason they had to close the diner. The guilt was unbearable. I couldn't bring myself to say anything to my parents, so I just cried under the covers, silently apologizing to them over and over. Because of my condition, I didn't go on to high school. I also had a younger brother. At the time, he was only in his first year of middle school. I felt awful about uprooting him, too, and apologized constantly for dragging him into our move. But he never once complained. In fact, he went out of his way to help our parents with their work on his days off. Eventually, my brother started his own agricultural business to support the family, and now that my condition has mostly cleared up, I work there as one of his employees. That's why these memories aren't ones I like revisiting. After all the trouble I caused, I'd rather not dwell on this. I'll just dodge the question. Well, it was a mix of personal reasons. Nothing worth sharing, really. Huh, I see. I thought maybe you ran off somewhere to avoid me. So, which high school did you go to? I didn't go to high school. Oh, really? Talking to me when no one else is around and barely reacting to what I say, some things never change, even after 15 years. To be honest, I didn't think you'd show up to the reunion, so in a way, I got lucky. What do you mean? I'm glad we got to meet again. Oh, looks like my friends are calling me. See you later. With a cold glance, Rachel briskly walked away after saying that. Glad we got to meet again? Her expression doesn't match her words. And she keeps asking me all these questions. What's she really thinking? Although Rachel's behavior bothered me, I decided it wasn't worth overthinking and chose to focus on enjoying the reunion. Fortunately, a few friends I was close to back in middle school were there, so I didn't have to spend the event as a lonely outcast. As we reminisced about old times, the conversation inevitably turned to Rachel. Apparently, she went to a prestigious high school, then got into the University of Tokyo, where she even became Miss Tokyo University. Well, she was always smart, and her looks were never in question, so that's not really surprising. What is surprising, though, is how little her attitude toward me has changed. Not wanting to ruin the mood, I played along and nodded politely as they talked about her. After about 15 minutes of reminiscing about middle school stories, the group temporarily disbanded, and Rachel approached me again. Hey, can you solve this? With that, Rachel handed me 3 sheets of paper. Each one had some sort of problem written in English, German, and French. Here we go again. I thought she'd grown out of this childish behavior. Back in middle school, she pulled stunts like this countless times. I couldn't tell if she was drunk on her own academic success or if she just enjoyed looking down on people less capable than herself, but every time, she'd challenge me with problems designed to be unsolvable for me. If I struggled or failed to solve them, the pattern was always the same: she'd mock and belittle me. As another unpleasant memory from those days flashed through my mind, Rachel smirked and spoke. "If you solve even one, I'll do whatever you want. Heck, I'll even give myself to you as a reward." Ridiculous, her condescending attitude is way too obvious, I thought, letting out a sigh. Seeing that, Rachel's expression grew even more pleased. "Well, too hard for you to solve?" "No, I've already solved them all." "What?" "The answer to the English problem is 48 kilometers per hour, the German one is 1%, and the French one is the 25th page." "What? How?" "Don't get so flustered. Let me explain it all for you." The problem, written in English, described a boy driving a car from his house to a neighboring town and back. He traveled at a speed of 40 kilometers per hour on the way there and 60 kilometers per hour on the way back. The question was to calculate the average speed of the entire trip. You probably thought I'd just take 40 plus 60 divided by 2 and say the answer is 50 kilometers per hour, didn't you? But the calculation is straightforward. Since we don't know the exact distance, let's assume the shortest common denominator, 120 kilometers, as the distance to the town. On the way there, it takes 120 divided by 40 is equal to 3 hours. On the way back, it's 120 divided by 60 is equal to 2 hours. Now we have enough information. The total distance is 240 kilometers, and the total time is 5 hours. Divide the distance by the time, and you get 48 kilometers per hour. Next up, the German problem. Another trick question, right? The problem, written in German, was a probability question. It described a virus that infects 1 in 10,000 people, and a test that can detect the virus with 99% accuracy. The question was, if the test result indicates that someone is infected, what is the actual probability that they are indeed infected? This one's designed to make you think the answer is 99%, right? I could already picture you mocking me if I'd said that. You just need to think in concrete numbers. Let's assume a population of 1 million. If 1 in 10,000 people is infected, that means there are 100 infected individuals in this population. With the test being 99% accurate, 99 out of those 100 infected people will correctly test positive, while 1 will incorrectly test negative. The same logic applies in reverse. Among the 999,900 uninfected people, 1% or 9,999 will be mistakenly identified as positive. Got it so far? Oh yeah. So, let's break it down. The total number of people who tested positive is 99 plus 9,999, which gives us 10,098. That's our denominator. Out of these, only 99 are actually infected. Now it's just a simple division, 99 divided by 10,098, which is roughly 0.01. So, the actual probability is 1%. Correct. Finally, the French one. You really went out of your way to make this one tedious. The last problem, written in French, was quite simple in concept. It described a book with 1 torn page. The sum of the page numbers of the remaining intact pages was 15,000. The question was, which page was torn from the book? There wasn't much information to go on, so I started by estimating the total number of pages. I used the handy formula for the sum of numbers from 1 to n, which is n equals 1/2n, n plus 1. I set that 15,000 is approximately equal to 1/2n, n plus 1. Solving for n, I got roughly 173.2. That means the book has either 173 or 174 pages. Following so far? Yes. Then it's just a matter of plugging in the numbers. If the book has 173 pages, n equals 173, so the total page sum is 15,051 using the formula. The problem states that the sum of the remaining pages is 15,000, so the sum of the torn page numbers is 15,051 minus 15,000 is equal to 51. Assume the torn page is x, with its reverse side being x plus 1. Solve x plus 1 equals 51, and you get x equals 25. Since pages are always printed as pairs, like front and back, the torn pages are 25 and 26. So the answer is page 25. But what if the book had 174 pages? Didn't you consider that possibility? There's no need to. If the book had 174 pages, the torn pages would be 112 and 113, based on the same calculation. However, books are bound so that odd-numbered pages are on one side and even-numbered pages are on the other. If pages 112 and 113 were torn, it would mean 2 sheets were missing, which contradicts the problem. This kind of oversight wouldn't slip past me. After finishing my explanation, Rachel stood frozen, wide-eyed, as though she couldn't believe I'd solved them all. She must have been planning to humiliate me after finding out I didn't go to high school. What a pointless, childish game. As I thought about this, Rachel finally collected herself and spoke. Wow. That's amazing. I didn't think you'd solve them so quickly. Did you go to college, by any chance? Yeah. Which one? Harvard. At that moment, I could tell not just Rachel but everyone around us had started murmuring in shock. Well, I did tell them I didn't go to high school, so it's only natural they'd be a bit surprised. What followed was an onslaught of questions from everyone, far more than I'd anticipated. The reunion eventually ended in a flurry of activity. Though I was invited to the after-party, I declined because I had unfinished business to attend to. I stayed behind at the reunion venue. And so did Rachel. In fact, as the others left to head to the after-party, I'd intentionally stopped Rachel from leaving. The reason? To uncover the truth behind her attitude toward me. Once I confirmed we were alone, I turned to her and spoke. Do you remember what you said earlier? What was it about, again? Don't play dumb. You were the one who said it. If I solved even one problem, you'd do whatever I asked. I have no idea what you're talking about. What a conveniently selective memory you've got. Hard to believe you graduated from Tokyo University. What did you just say? I'm just stating facts. I'll ask you one last time, do you remember what you said earlier? Ha! With a deep sigh, Rachel finally responded. Yes, I remember. I didn't think you'd take it so seriously, but fine. Do whatever you want. With that, she closed her eyes as if resigning herself to whatever was coming. You're misunderstanding something. It's not going to be anything like what you're imagining. Then what is it? Why did you stop me from leaving? It's simple. Why were you so insistent on pestering me, not just in middle school but even today? At last, I asked the question that had been nagging at me for years. Rachel's taunting demeanor from earlier disappeared. She fell silent, refusing to answer. What, are you going to say you don't have a reason? Why does it even matter to you? Seeing that this was going nowhere, I decided to answer her question first. I explained why I'd stopped attending school, family circumstances, and the worsening of my chronic condition, and how the exacerbation of that condition was linked to harassment I'd experienced at school. Thanks to you constantly picking on me in middle school, one of your so-called admirers among the upperclassmen decided to target me. That's when the daily harassment began. I continued my story. I explained how the harassment escalated day by day. On top of that, Rachel's persistent pestering wore me down mentally, little by little. Combined with the worsening of my chronic condition, I eventually reached the point where I couldn't bring myself to go to school anymore. That's everything. Now you should have enough context to explain your blatant hostility toward me. Your turn. Answer my question now. Ha, ha, ha. Before I could finish, Rachel suddenly burst into laughter, as if she'd had some sort of epiphany. What's so funny? Have you lost your mind? Oh, I see now. Fine, I'll answer your question. Then Rachel began to explain why she'd been so fixated on me. Her actions, she said, weren't out of admiration or anything positive, they stemmed from resentment. She revealed that her hostility toward me was motivated by revenge for something she believed I'd taken from her, her mother. I don't get it. That doesn't make any sense. I've never done anything like that. Shut up and listen. Rachel continued her story. One day, she saw her mother visiting my father's diner. The two of them were chatting so intimately that it was obvious their relationship wasn't just platonic. Soon after, Rachel discovered the shocking truth: her mother had married my father. Well, things are getting complicated. I didn't know much about my mother's past, but this is unexpected. I get why you kept pestering me now. You ruined my family, and that's all you have to say? But I guess your chronic illness worsening and keeping you from high school was just karma. Maybe that was divine punishment. With that, Rachel picked up her things and quickly left the venue. I understand the story now, but it doesn't sit right with me. The remarriage was my parents' decision, not mine. This so-called revenge of hers is entirely misplaced. As I mulled over the situation, I wandered through the now empty venue. So that's what she meant by, "I'm glad we could meet again at the reunion." Seems I'd been harboring resentment without even knowing it. And her saying I ruined her family? Judging by how my parents seemed, it doesn't look like it was some kind of home-wrecking situation. The whole thing feels tangled. Countless possibilities raced through my mind, but I knew that keeping it all to myself wouldn't help the situation move forward. I decided to head home, leaving the now empty venue behind. The sun had long set, and the lonely sound of cicadas echoed through the night as I made my way back. When I got home, I thought it was the perfect opportunity to talk to my parents about what Rachel had told me. So, that's the story. Seems like I've been on the receiving end of some misplaced resentment. That girl. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I should have noticed something was wrong. It's not your fault, Mom. Nobody could have anticipated something like this. It's partly my fault too. I should have paid closer attention. I'm sorry. No need to apologize. That's not why I brought it up. But Rachel's story still sticks with me. Is what she said true? Oh, that. I was planning to tell you about it at some point, but there's a bit of a misunderstanding in her version. Yes, there's more to it. A misunderstanding? Yeah, let me explain. My parents then told me the truth. After hearing their side of the story, I laid back on the floor, staring at the ceiling. I guess I need to let Rachel know, don't I? I had a feeling this might lead to more trouble, but I couldn't just keep it to myself. So, I decided to meet with Rachel and tell her the truth on another day. Having made the decision, the next challenge was that I didn't have her contact information. With the help of a middle school friend and some effort, I managed to set up a meeting with Rachel about a week later. A week later, I arrived at the cafe a bit early to pass the time, and soon, I spotted Rachel approaching from a distance with an unmistakably irritated expression. Well, someone's in a bad mood today. Of course I am. Do you think I'd be thrilled to be called out by you? Wow, you really don't hold back, huh? Shut up. So, what's this about my misunderstanding? At the reunion, you mentioned my father's remarriage. Afterward, I spoke with my parents. And it turns out the truth is a little different from what you think. What do you mean? Don't worry, I'll explain everything in order. I then relayed the story my parents had told me. The reason my father and Rachel's mother remarried was that Rachel's father had thrown her mother out of the house, leaving her with nowhere to go. My father did that? It's not a pleasant story, I know. Want me to stop? No, keep going. Noticing the change in her demeanor, I continued. Rachel's father had been obsessed with having a male heir to take over his business. When it was discovered that Rachel's mother was infertile, they struggled for years to have children. Eventually, after undergoing extensive fertility treatments, she became pregnant only to give birth to a girl. Her father, enraged that she hadn't produced a son, expelled Rachel's mother from the family. So, my mother disappeared because I was born? There's no need to blame yourself. That's something entirely out of your control. I know, but still. Do you want me to stop here? No, I want to hear everything. You don't look like you're holding up well. The elegant, composed Rachel I saw at the reunion is nowhere to be found. But it's better for you to know the full story, even if it hurts, than to live with half-truths. Alright, if you insist. Understanding Rachel's need for clarity, I shared everything my parents had told me without holding back. First, I explained that Rachel's father had never truly loved her mother. After their separation, he only took Rachel in for the sake of appearances. Her mother, left penniless and wandering, eventually met my father by chance, and the two remarried. Ironically, after their remarriage, they had a son and my younger brother, and their life has continued since then. That's it. As harsh as it is, that's the truth. That can't be true. Rachel, still unable to fully process the truth, showed visible signs of distress. Of course, hearing this would be a shock. Anyone would be shaken to their core. If I were in her shoes, I might have passed out on the spot. I thought. Suddenly, Rachel stood up and began staggering toward the exit. Hey, what's wrong? Sorry, I just need to be alone for a bit. With that, Rachel quietly left the cafe. I always thought she lived in a completely different world, but even someone like her has struggles and pain. It's obvious when you think about it. But still. Maybe the way she acted toward me in middle school was her way of avoiding the reality. Would things have been different if I'd talked to her properly back then? Not that it matters now. After reflecting for a moment, I finished my coffee and left the cafe. I wandered the neighborhood for a while, but I couldn't shake the image of Rachel's face after hearing the truth. I thought telling her the truth would give me some closure, but it just left a bad taste in my mouth. Unable to bring myself to return home that night, I decided to stay at a nearby hotel. After checking in at the front desk and entering my room, I noticed a message on my phone. To my surprise, it was from Rachel. The message said she had something she wanted to talk about and asked if we could meet somewhere soon. She didn't specify what she wanted to talk about. Maybe she's planning to get back at me? Judging by the tone, though, it seems like she's sorted through her thoughts a bit. Either way, I've got no reason not to go. Curious about what she wanted to discuss, I arranged to meet Rachel again 2 days later. When the day came, I arrived early once more. Relaxing with a cup of coffee, I noticed Rachel walking toward me from the entrance. Looking slightly awkward and uneasy. She's really wearing her emotions on her sleeve again. Was she always this easy to read? I wondered. As soon as Rachel sat down, she bowed her head deeply toward me. I'm so sorry for all the terrible things I've done to you. Whoa, where's this coming from all of a sudden? After our last talk, I couldn't fully accept what you told me. Honestly, I thought it might be a lie. But after doing my own research, I found out everything you said was true. Of course it's true. I wouldn't make up something like that. I'm truly sorry. I treated you so horribly, all because of my own selfish assumptions. Well, yeah, but if you're apologizing sincerely now, that's enough for me. We're taught in elementary school that when we do something wrong, we say sorry. Hearing that from you is enough. I'm not going to hold it against you anymore. You're really such a good person. After all the awful things I've done to you, that's in the past now. More importantly, what are you going to do from here? Now that you know the truth, are you still planning to stay in that house? No, actually. I've decided to leave home, and I've already quit my father's company. Well, that sounds like a solid decision. Yeah, and again, I'm truly sorry. I know I don't deserve to be forgiven, but I just had to tell you directly. That's all I wanted to say. As Rachel stood to leave, I quickly called out to her. What is it? Oh, sorry. There's something I want to talk to you about too. Something you want to talk about? You said you quit the company, right? Do you have another job lined up? No, not yet. Perfect timing, then. Why don't you come work at my company? I could really use someone like you. What? Hearing my offer, Rachel froze, her expression a mixture of disbelief and confusion. This isn't about forgiving you for what you've done. It's just that, in a way, you're a victim too. You got caught up in the selfish actions of the adults around you, and it destroyed your sense of stability. That earns a bit of sympathy. That's all there is to it. So, you don't have to decide right now, but think it over. Tears suddenly began streaming down Rachel's face as she quietly spoke. Honestly, how can you be so kind? Why would you go out of your way for someone like me? You don't owe me anything. You're giving me way too much credit. I'm not some noble person. Thank you. But why me? Stop putting yourself down. It doesn't help. The reason is simple, I think you're talented. Isn't that enough? Yes, it is. I'll gratefully accept your offer. And so, Rachel began working at the company my brother and I had started together. It turned out my instincts were spot on. Rachel's work lived up to her Tokyo University credentials, and ever since she joined, our company's performance has skyrocketed. Around the same time, her father's company suffered a significant downturn. Rumor had it that Rachel's departure had dealt an even bigger blow to the company than anyone had anticipated. How ironic, the daughter he took in solely for appearances was the one propping up his company. If he'd paid more attention to those around him, things might have turned out differently. Then again, knowing him, he probably wouldn't have changed. Not that it matters to me anymore. Meanwhile, Rachel reconciled with her mother, and now she occasionally comes over to our house to share meals with us. As for my brother, while their blood relation made things a bit awkward at first, they've since grown to be close siblings. Just the other day, at Rachel's request for dessert, the two of them went to an all-you-can-eat sweets buffet. They joked and laughed about how often they're mistaken for a couple whenever they go out together. So much has happened, really, so much. Up until recently, our impressions of each other couldn't have been worse. But people make mistakes. And as long as they're willing to acknowledge them and take a step forward, life can turn out better than you'd ever imagine. Watching the smiles on Rachel and my family's faces, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we'd all come. Seriously, how can you even be here when you only speak Japanese? A woman chuckled, glancing at me with a sly smile. Feeling the weight of her gaze, Mary, the company CEO's daughter, lowered her head in discomfort. She's always kind, even to a low-ranking employee like me. Deciding to teach Morgan, the rude client company CEO, a lesson, I stepped in to turn the tables. I revealed a side of myself no one had seen before, stealing the spotlight in the process. As a result, Morgan's face turned pale. My name is Kyle, 30 years old. 2 years ago, I joined Easy Exams, a company specializing in educational materials for kids, as a mid-career hire. At work, everyone quietly focused on their computers. The company isn't huge, with about 100 employees on staff. I sat quietly at my desk, diligently working on my tasks. Kyle, could you help transcribe something? It's the minutes from yesterday's meeting. Sure, no problem. I'll have it ready today. After finishing my own tasks, I began summarizing the requested minutes. At Easy Exams, we have a culture of focusing on our own work without interfering with others. Before I knew it, lunchtime had arrived. In the cafeteria, some chatted as they ate, while others like me sat alone, quietly enjoying their meals. How's the new project going? It looks like a lot to handle. Yeah, but Kyle's been helping, and he's so reliable. He works fast. True, but don't you think Kyle's a bit of a mystery? He never talks about himself. Hearing this, I stayed focused on my lunch without reacting. The day flew by, and the office grew quieter as people finished their work and headed home. More and more of my colleagues wrapped up and left. Once I finished for the day, I shut down my computer. As I stood up, Harvey, my manager, called out to me. Heading out, Kyle? Great job today. Let's give it our best again tomorrow. Yes, thank you. Have a good evening. He nodded with a smile. I bowed slightly and left the office. After returning home, I quickly threw together dinner, took a shower, brushed my teeth, and flopped into bed. I spent some time watching videos on my phone until I got sleepy and fell asleep. That was my usual routine. Ha! My sister? One day after work, I noticed a missed call from Natalie, my older sister. Curious, I immediately called her back, and she picked up right away. Hey, Natalie. What's up? Oh, Kyle. Sorry to bother you while you're working. It's fine. What's going on? She hesitated, sounding a little apologetic as she began to speak. Actually, I have a favor to ask. Could you watch Bella for just the weekend? Bella? What happened? That's unusual. Bella is the golden retriever my sister and her husband own. A playful 2-year-old girl, she's the darling of their household. They truly cherish Bella and take excellent care of her. Both of us have to go on business trips, and the pet hotels are fully booked. Usually, one of us is always home, but this time we're in a bind. I see. It's this weekend, right? Yeah. I promise we'll pick her up by 9 p.m. on Sunday. I thought it over. I didn't have any plans this weekend, whether out of convenience or loneliness. I wanted to respond to my family's SOS and thought it'd be fun to play with Bella. Got it, Natalie. I'll take care of Bella. Don't worry, it'll work out somehow. Really? Thanks, Kyle. Bella's gotten even more playful, so good luck. I'll bring her over Saturday morning. Got it. Saturday then. Looking forward to Bella coming over. Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver. With that, my sister hung up the phone. When I got home, I tidied up to prepare for Bella's arrival. The place wasn't messy, but I double-checked to make sure nothing dangerous was left out that she might accidentally eat. On Friday night, I vacuumed thoroughly and informed Catherine, the landlord, about the situation. Even though it's a pet-friendly apartment, I wanted to avoid any misunderstandings. Excuse me, Catherine, I have something to ask. When I explained the situation to Catherine, the landlord who lives nearby, she smiled warmly. Oh, I see. That's fine. How exciting. Being an animal lover, Catherine seemed excited and asked about what kind of dog Bella was. I told her Bella was a 2-year-old golden retriever, and Catherine happily mentioned that she had once owned a golden retriever herself. With her approval secured, I felt relieved and ready to welcome Bella. I spent Friday night looking forward to seeing Bella again after such a long time. Then, on Saturday morning around 7 a.m., the doorbell rang. When I answered, there stood my sister and Bella, sitting politely with her tongue out. "Good morning, Kyle." "Morning, Natalie." "Bella. Long time no see, how've you been?" Bella barked happily and wagged her tail energetically. I crouched down and gave her a thorough petting. "I'll definitely pick her up by 9 p.m. tomorrow." "Thanks again." My sister left Bella's favorite toys, treats, and food before giving Bella a big hug. "Bella, be a good girl and listen to Kyle, okay?" With that, my sister waved goodbye and hurried off, pulling her suitcase behind her. My sister, a professional woman, always seems so busy. "All right, Bella. Let's have lots of fun over the next 2 days." Bella barked enthusiastically, wagging her tail, and I couldn't help but smile. And so began our 2 days together. Bella's a smart dog who knows how to communicate what she wants. After playing with her toys for a while, she brought me her leash. Do you want to go for a walk?" In response to my question, Bella barked excitedly and started circling around me. Amused by her playful pleading, I smiled and attached her leash. There's a large park nearby that even has a dog park. I decided we'd head there and started walking. "Isn't this great, Bella?" "The weather's perfect." Bella barked excitedly, clearly enjoying herself. She wagged her tail vigorously, glancing around curiously in all directions. It seemed like she was delighting in the unfamiliar scenery, so I matched her curiosity and took a few detours as we walked. "All right, we're here, Bella." After a short break to give Bella some water, we arrived at the park with the dog park. I went to the reception to check in. "Hello. Do you have proof of vaccination and a license?" "Yes, I've got them here." "Thank you." I pulled out the vaccination certificate and license from the bag my sister had given me. "Thank you, I'll check." "Everything looks good." The receptionist said this as she returned the documents to me. She explained the rules and precautions for using the dog park. I carefully noted everything and entered the park with Bella. Inside, the park was just the right level of crowded, and I firmly held Bella's leash as we stepped in. "All right, Bella. Don't bother other dogs if they seem uncomfortable, and don't be too persistent, okay?" Bella seemed to nod in understanding, as if to say, "Got it." I continued explaining various things to Bella. She circled around me impatiently, as if to say, "I get it already, now hurry up and take off the leash." All right. I'm letting you go now." "Go on, Bella." As soon as I removed the leash, Bella bolted across the park at full speed. "Wow, that's fast." She dashed to an open area away from the other dogs, turning sharply and running in circles, clearly having the time of her life. I took out my phone to record her antics and sent the video to Natalie. Bella sprinted around wildly for a while before returning to me. Panting happily, Bella stuck her head into the bag holding her toys. She pulled out her favorite ball and pressed it against my stomach. "Oh? You want me to throw it?" Bella looked at me as if to say, "Exactly," and then backed away a little. I checked the other dogs to make sure none were heading our way. Responding to Bella's urging, I threw the ball as far as I could. "Go get it, Bella." Bella joyfully ran after it, grabbed the ball, and brought it back. We repeated this over and over, having a blast at the dog park. "Phew, Bella. Did you have fun?" When I asked her, she licked my face enthusiastically, clearly satisfied. "Hey, that tickles." "All right, let's head back." We played to our heart's content and decided to head home, but that's when the unexpected happened. "All right, Bella. We're almost home. Today was fun, huh?" As I enjoyed the peaceful moment, Bella suddenly flopped down on the ground and refused to move. "Bella, what's wrong?" "We're not home yet." I knelt down to check on her, petting her gently, but she stubbornly stayed put. I tried tugging on her leash and coaxing her, but she wouldn't budge. I recalled videos on social media of dogs refusing to walk, with their owners either carrying them or dragging them like a mop. At the time, I laughed at those videos, thinking how tough it must be. Never thought I'd end up in that position myself. No choice. Do I have to carry Bella? Just as I nervously began to slide my arms under Bella, wondering how much she might weigh, a beautiful woman passing by stopped and spoke to me. "Oh my, that looks tough. Is this her first walk?" I turned around to look at the woman. She was dressed elegantly and wore a gentle smile. No, actually, she's my sister's dog. She's usually energetic, but now she's suddenly refusing to walk. I called out, "Bella," while tugging on her leash, but she ignored me completely, lying stubbornly on the ground. At my wit's end with Bella refusing to move, I didn't know what to do. "Is that so? Would you mind if I helped a little?" Sure," I replied, nodding hesitantly, and she crouched in front of Bella, gently stroking her while speaking softly. "Bella, it's okay to take a break here. No need to push yourself. Do you want to go back slowly?" The woman's calm voice and soothing touch seemed to have a magical effect. Bella closed her eyes, clearly enjoying the attention. To my amazement, Bella soon got up and started rubbing against the woman affectionately. I couldn't help but think, wait, what about all the effort I put in? But I was just relieved that Bella finally got up. But after Bella had refused to budge for so long, I couldn't help but wonder, why? So, I asked the woman. "That was amazing. How did you manage to handle it so well? Dogs are very perceptive of human emotions." She probably sensed your frustration and thought it'd be fun to tease you a little. The woman laughed softly as she petted Bella. I could almost swear Bella had a smug look on her face, as if saying, "See? I've got you figured out. Honestly. You really saved me. Thank you so much. You're very welcome. See you again, Bella." The woman gave me a polite bow and waved at Bella before walking away. I returned the bow and thanked her again, then headed home. On the way back, Bella, having met the woman, walked along in high spirits as if nothing had happened. "Bella, next time, please just walk home properly, okay?" Of course, Bella pretended not to hear me. The weekend with Bella flew by, and my sister and her husband thanked me profusely for taking care of her. Though I was tired, spending time with Bella was truly refreshing, and I felt fulfilled. Good morning. The next day, I arrived at work as usual. However, the office on Monday had an unusual tension in the air. When I asked a few colleagues who had arrived earlier, I learned that there was an emergency all-hands meeting scheduled for that day. What's going on? An all-staff meeting out of the blue? Could it be about poor sales or something? No idea, but it must be important. Let's hope it's good news. As everyone gathered and waited in the large conference room, our CEO, Mr. Kennedy, entered. A few executives followed closely behind him. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I've called this meeting to make an important announcement. The room fell silent as everyone focused on his words. Due to recent health concerns, I've decided to step down as CEO. Today, I'd like to introduce my successor, my daughter, Mary. She still has a lot to learn, but I hope you'll support and guide her. There was a stir in the room. Mr. Kennedy's retirement was surprising enough, but the announcement that his daughter would be the next CEO was completely unexpected. As Mr. Kennedy turned around, the door opened, and a woman entered the room. The moment I saw her, I was so shocked that I couldn't help but let out a gasp. Wait! The woman stood before the employees with a tense expression and bowed deeply. She was the same woman I had met at the park just the day before. Hello, everyone. My name is Mary. I'm sure the sudden news has surprised you. But I look forward to working with all of you to make this company even better. Thank you for your support. I stared at Mary, unable to believe my eyes. I never imagined that the woman I met at the park would be introduced as the next CEO of our company. Please take care of both the company and Mary moving forward." With those words, Mr. Kennedy, Mary, and the executives bowed, and the urgent meeting came to an end. As the employees began to disperse, Mary noticed me, smiled warmly, and walked over. "Excuse me, aren't you the one taking care of Bella?" "Yes, that's me. Honestly, I'm so surprised to run into you again today, and to have you introduced as the next CEO. I didn't see that coming." Mary laughed warmly at my reaction. I was surprised too. As I was introducing myself, I thought, wait, isn't that? It seems we both had quite the surprise. Looking at Mary's smile, I felt a strong desire to help her succeed as the next CEO. "It's going to be challenging, but I'll do my best to support you." "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even introduce myself. I'm Kyle. Nice to meet you." "Thank you, Kyle. I look forward to working with you." Mary extended her hand for a handshake, and I firmly shook it. Her hand was small and warm. After starting her role as the CEO in training, Mary actively engaged with each employee, making an effort to speak with everyone and taking the lead in her work. While many employees appreciated her proactive approach, some were not pleased with the fact that she was Mr. Kennedy's daughter. Isn't Mary being treated specially just because she's Mr. Kennedy's daughter? Work has so many small details, does she even understand that? With those words, a spiteful colleague dumped a pile of documents on Mary and assigned her increasingly complex tasks. Mary, though clearly overwhelmed, tried her best to handle the workload alone, but it was simply too much for one person. When I saw her surrounded by a mountain of papers, I sighed deeply. What an awful thing to do. "Mary, are you okay?" "Yes, I'm fine. It's just there's so much work piling up. There's no way you can handle this much alone. I'll help you, let's tackle it together." "Really? Thank you so much, Kyle. That's a relief." Mary's expression softened slightly, showing her gratitude. "Of course. Let's get started." By working together to clear the paperwork and streamline the tasks, Mary gradually regained her composure. This event seemed to naturally increase the conversations between us. We started having lunch together more often and sharing our thoughts and goals during breaks. It was around that time when I was unexpectedly summoned to Mr. Kennedy's office. As I entered, Mr. Kennedy greeted me with a warm smile. "Kyle, I have a favor to ask of you. Could you become Mary's secretary and support her?" "Me, as Mary's secretary? I'm not really the type who likes to stand out." I felt confused and decided to share my honest feelings. Mr. Kennedy acknowledged my hesitation but continued to persuade me further. "I've seen you and Mary together, and while I understand she's not always viewed favorably by others, and it pains me to see her go through that, this is something she needs to overcome on her own. But when she's with you, she shows a relaxed smile, just like when she's at home." I was surprised by Mr. Kennedy's words. The thought that being with me helped her relax was unexpected. Knowing I might be supporting her warmed my heart. If that's true, it makes me genuinely happy. If you support her, I'm confident she'll grow into her role. Please, Kyle. Mr. Kennedy looked at me with a serious expression. After a moment of thought, I made my decision for Mary's sake. All right. If it's for Mary, I'll take on the role of her secretary. At my response, Mr. Kennedy's face lit up with genuine joy. He grabbed my hands with both of his and shook them vigorously. Thank you. Truly, thank you. Mary will be so happy. When Mary heard about my appointment as her secretary, she was ecstatic. Really? Are you serious? With you by my side, it feels like I have an army of support. Her radiant smile was so infectious that I couldn't help but smile too. I'm glad you feel that way. I'll do my best to support you, so let's work hard together. Taking on my new role as Mary's secretary, I worked alongside her to manage the day-to-day tasks. One day, it was decided that we would attend a party where several clients would also be present. It seemed that the event would include multinational companies, not just from English-speaking regions but also from French-speaking and Chinese-speaking areas. I assumed everything would go smoothly, especially since interpreters were arranged for the event. Or so I thought. Wait, what? Are you serious? When we arrived at the venue, Mary's phone rang, and as she spoke, her face turned pale, looking at me in distress. Was something wrong? I silently gestured to ask her. What's wrong? The interpreters can't make it. You're kidding. Mary already seemed nervous about attending her first party as the company's representative, and now hearing about the interpreter's absence. She looked ready to collapse. After ending the call, her face was completely pale. Are you okay, Mary? She barely reacted to my question. This is really bad, I thought. I gently guided her to an empty chair and went to fetch her a drink. When I returned with the drink, I saw Mary standing, accompanied by another woman. It was Ms. Morgan, the CEO of Morgan Trading, one of our clients. Ms. Morgan, it's a pleasure to see you again. When I greeted her, Ms. Morgan responded with a cold smirk. Oh, hello. You're the one who recently became a secretary, aren't you? Let me see. I'm Kyle. It's been a while. I had met Ms. Morgan during Mary's client visits before, and she always carried an air of superiority. She was the complete opposite of Mary in demeanor, and while I found her somewhat difficult to deal with, I kept that to myself. Even now, I responded with a polite smile. Yes, Kyle. Well, I've heard Mary only speaks Japanese. That's not very useful in a global business setting, is it? Honestly, I wonder how someone like that even dares to show up here. Wouldn't it be better to leave? Mary's expression briefly showed a trace of sadness at those words. However, she said nothing and lowered her head. Seeing her like that made anger well up inside me. Hold on a moment, Ms. Morgan. Yes, Kyle? What is it? Mary is an incredible person and an invaluable asset to our company. The fact that she only speaks Japanese doesn't diminish her worth in the slightest. I spoke with conviction, which seemed to irritate Ms. Morgan. Poof. Anyone can talk big. But in a global business setting, multilingual skills are essential. With that, Ms. Morgan walked over to a group of multilingual representatives. Moments later, she returned, bringing all of them with her. I couldn't shake a bad feeling about what was coming next. Mary, this is Jacques from France, Klaus from Germany, and Maria from Spain. Why don't you greet them? Mary hesitated but managed to muster a smile and bowed. Hello, nice to meet you. The representatives looked visibly puzzled, while Ms. Morgan gave a faint smirk. Oh, Mary. It seems Japanese alone might be a bit challenging here, don't you think? Reaching my limit with her condescending attitude toward Mary, I decided it was time to reveal my hidden abilities. Good evening, Jacques. It's a pleasure to meet you tonight. When I spoke fluent French, Mary exclaimed, "What?" in surprise, her eyes wide with astonishment. I gently placed my hand on Mary's back, encouraging her to step forward. Go ahead, Mary. Don't worry, I'll translate everything for you. When I winked at her, Mary finally relaxed and gave me a relieved smile. But French alone won't be enough, right? I turned to her with a calm smile. Don't worry, Ms. Morgan. I speak 7 languages. I continued by speaking in German and Spanish with the 2 representatives Ms. Morgan had introduced. Starting with Mary's self-introduction, I sprinkled in some light jokes to make the conversation more engaging. As the atmosphere grew livelier, more people gathered around us, and I switched to Chinese, Korean, English, and Italian to introduce Mary to them as well. Together, Mary and I engaged in enjoyable conversations with the representatives. It had been a while since I used all 7 languages, and my brain was working at full capacity. Though I had been nervous at first, my past efforts didn't let me down. The conversations flowed smoothly, and we had a highly productive and enjoyable time. At some point, I realized Ms. Morgan had left the area, glaring at us from afar with a bitter expression. I couldn't help but think, serves you right, though I knew it wasn't the most mature thought. Ah, I'm so glad everything went well. It's all thanks to you, Kyle. As we left the party venue, Mary got into a taxi, and the moment it started moving, exhaustion seemed to hit her like a wave. That's not true, Mary. It's all thanks to your hard work. I only managed because you translated for me. But still, there were several leads for potential deals tonight. What a success! Mary was practically bouncing with excitement. Indeed, the party had expanded our network and seemed to open up promising new business opportunities. Hey, how about we grab something to eat? My treat. I barely ate anything, and now I'm starving. As she said that, I realized I was hungry too. Speaking 7 languages after so long had taken its toll, and I could use some food. Gratefully, I accepted Mary's offer. The taxi took us to a French restaurant, where we decided to enjoy a proper meal. Cheers! Cheers! Great job tonight! Mary and I clinked our glasses, each sipping a single glass of wine as we ate. Reflecting on the ups and downs of the party made for an enjoyable conversation. When dessert arrived, Mary suddenly grew serious. Kyle, can I ask you something? How is it that you can speak 7 languages, yet before I joined, you were doing mostly menial tasks? Her directness made me chuckle a little. She had always been the type to ask whatever was on her mind without hesitation. I decided to be honest and opened up about my past. I graduated from Harvard University, and I can speak 7 languages. Mary's eyes widened in astonishment. What? That's incredible. Harvard? But why didn't you ever mention it before? I sighed deeply, gazing into the distance as I began to explain. I've always been good at studying, always been the smart one. My life seemed smooth sailing for a while. But because of that, I faced a lot of envy and resentment from others. That's terrible. When you excel too much, there's always someone who won't like it. I never boasted about my abilities, at least I don't think I did. But it didn't matter to some people. Looking out the window, I recalled the challenges of my past. Back then, I was working at one of the most well-known companies in Japan, thriving in a competitive environment. Wow, Kyle's on it again. That guy can do everything. He nails every project and gets nothing but praise from the boss. But honestly, he's kind of annoying. Maybe he should think about how it feels for the rest of us. I wasn't oblivious to those whispers, but I didn't let them bother me. During school, I'd had similar experiences, but I usually managed to turn things around and make friends. But that was back in school. I later realized that was a naive assumption. One afternoon, on my way to a meeting, my colleague Hayden stopped me in the hallway. Hey, Kyle. Got a second? Sure, what's up? Look, I need a favor. I've got this new project, and I'm swamped. Could you help put together the materials? I'd owe you one. Seeing how stressed he looked, I agreed to help. My own work was mostly finished, and preparing some documents wasn't a big deal. All right, I'll take care of it. I readily agreed to help, never imagining that during the project meeting, it would be revealed that the materials I had prepared contained significant errors. The manager, Mr. Miles, spoke up. Kyle, what is the meaning of this? These figures are completely wrong. What? That can't be. Standing at the back, Hayden folded his arms, a sly smile playing on his lips. Wow, even Kyle makes mistakes. This is a big deal. Though his words seemed concerned, the amusement in his eyes made it painfully clear he had set me up. As I stood there, stunned by the situation, I could hear Mr. Miles' exasperated sigh. This will delay the entire project. Someone needs to take responsibility. Although I wasn't fired, that incident marked the beginning of persistent harassment from my colleagues. I wasn't informed of important updates, intentionally ignored during meetings, and subjected to other subtle forms of harassment. Why is this happening to me? All I ever wanted was to work hard and get along with everyone. From that moment, I decided to hide my abilities and make an effort to stay unnoticed. When I shared this with Mary, her eyes welled up with tears. You've been through so much. And yet, you became my secretary and helped me like this. I don't even know how to thank you. Seeing her tears, I couldn't help but speak my mind. That's because I like you, Mary. Mary responded to my sudden confession with a surprised "oh." Her face quickly turned bright red. I'm sorry if this feels sudden, but when Bella wouldn't walk and you helped me, I thought you were such a kind person for smiling at someone like me. And even after finding out you're Mr. Kennedy's daughter and the company's next CEO, you never changed. At work, I was the type of guy who blended into the background, barely noticed, yet every time we met, Mary would always make the effort to greet me. Even after becoming her secretary, her presence in my life had grown immensely important. And today was no different. Seeing Ms. Morgan mock Mary and deliberately put her in a tough spot made my anger boil over. As your secretary, I know saying something like this might put you in a difficult position, and I'm sorry, but I'd like to be with you. Even if you turn me down, I'll still do my job properly, and I won't let it affect my behavior or. Before I could finish, Mary interrupted me. I won't say no. Absolutely not. Her voice was so loud it drew the attention of those around us. We both bowed repeatedly, apologizing for the disturbance. Does that mean? I asked cautiously, and Mary, her face still bright red, nodded. I like you too, Kyle. Mary's radiant smile was the brightest I had ever seen. From that moment, we became partners in both our personal and professional lives. Our relationship flourished, and a year after we started dating, we got married. We decided to celebrate our union with a wedding ceremony. Oh no, what am I going to do? I'm so nervous. As I paced back and forth in the groom's waiting room, Natalie couldn't help but laugh at me. Seriously? Why are you the one freaking out? That's pathetic. The star of the day is Mary, not you. She wasn't wrong, but nerves were nerves, and I couldn't help it. Which was more nerve-wracking, your Harvard entrance exam or this? For a moment, I almost said Harvard, but honestly, nothing compared to the pressure of this wedding. After all, just seeing my father-in-law, Mr. Kennedy, was nerve-wracking enough. Definitely this. The wedding. Natalie burst out laughing. Bella, did you hear that? Kyle says he's nervous. What a problem, huh? Bella, being petted by Natalie, barked energetically in response. Then she came over to me, pressing against me as if to say, get it together. Thanks, Bella. Not just for today, but for everything. Meeting Mary was all because of you. I gave Bella a thorough petting, and she responded enthusiastically, wagging her tail. Today, Bella was set to play a special role, not as a ring bearer, but as our ring dog. Bella, who had been the reason Mary and I first met, held a special place in both of our hearts. Even now, whenever work gets overwhelming, Mary often sighs and says, I just want to see Bella. Bella loves Mary just as much. Whenever we visit Natalie's place, she completely ignores me and jumps straight into Mary's arms. Hey, Kyle, it's time. Get out there. Is it all ready? All right, I'm nervous, but I'll do my best. That's the spirit. I'll be watching. Natalie gave me a firm pat on the back and sent me off. Bella, too, nudged my leg as if to say, you've got this. I went ahead to the chapel to wait for Mary. I was certain that even greater happiness lay ahead for us. There would undoubtedly be challenges, but I knew that together, Mary and I could handle anything. With that thought in mind, I stood there, waiting for the chapel doors to open. When they finally did, and I saw Mary standing there, I couldn't help but smile. 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 Smile.